Hello. Hello and welcome. For those of you who have been here before, you know who I am. My name is Zara. For those of you who have not been here before, hi, I'm Zara. You may remember me from such webcomics as Antiheroes, a, an ancient webcomic as far as the internet is concerned. We just passed, as of like a few weeks ago, we passed the 13-year anniversary. It came out right, I think it was like January 6th, 2008 was when I posted the original comic on Giant in the Playground. That was when I originally posted. We didn't move, we moved off site later in the year, I think around like March, but, or even later than that, maybe. I don't remember, but it was a very, very long time ago. So we're going to get things started. I don't really know how this stream is going to end up. I've got a lot of stuff on my mind. Everything is very disorganized right now. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But first, to answer Spudspud, your question, any other VR specific games? In my intro here, there's footage of me playing Superhot VR. Superhot VR is fantastic. I wish that they would make another one because I loved it. Also, Job Simulator is pretty good. It's silly and funny, but it's fun. And I have heard that Boneworks is a very good VR game, but I have not played it. So, get that out of the way for now. For the time being... Oh, right. To start everything off. I would like to say, if you are new here, obviously, I think it kind of goes without saying, but be nice in the chat. Just be respectful. This is not meant to be any kind of blame-laying game. This is more so just kind of a fun thing to hang out and get all of this stuff out of my brain and into the world, because this is a project I was very passionate about, and I want to give the community something. So anybody who's stirring up problems in chat, I won't hesitate to kick you. So don't make me come down there. In any event, I would also like to point out that since I am an affiliate on Twitch, Twitch plays ads on my channel. This whole stream is absolutely 100% not meant to be like fundraising or for getting money, nothing. Absolutely not. But I wanted to point out that I have no control over the ads. If I could turn them off, I would, but I can't. So I'm probably going to be taking regular ad breaks throughout the stream to prevent mid-roll ads from just playing randomly for people who aren't subscribed. If you're subscribed, you won't see ads. But for those of you who are not subscribed, I'm probably going to be taking some ad breaks just so that the mid-roll ads won't interrupt anything that you might be interested in hearing. Maybe, I'm answering your question. I want you to get that information. So I will make it very clear that when we're going to take an ad break for a few minutes, and then those subscribers, will still see whatever we're doing in the ad break, but there won't be anything important behind them, I promise. And if ads are still a problem and you want me to like repeat something, please ask, because I can't tell when ads are playing, and like I said, I have no control over it. So that's kind of my intent of mitigating that problem. Which reminds me, I could probably open my dashboard so that I can actually see this. Okay, so that is kind of it for the intro. I might repeat a couple things later, but for now, that is going to be it. I will now undeafen myself and introduce my cohorts. So joining me this evening I am Zara, the creator of Antiheroes. Joining me is my very good friend, Crazed Ewok, or Chris.
Hello.
You were the webmaster of the website that we built together, as well as a guest artist.
I was.
Very briefly.
I thought I had only done like 1 or 2 guest comics, but I was surprised to see there was 4.
There was, yes.
That's my contribution.
And also joining us is none other than the Leaking Pen.
Also, Alex in real life. Thanks for having me on, guys. I took over for a while working with the other Chris, who worked as an artist for a bit. I drew the scripts, so all of the really dumb jokes during the later half, those are my fault.
Hey, like I said, this isn't about blame. This is about just enjoying what was. Don't.
I was being sarcastic.
Oh, I know.
The extra bad puns. You can blame me for the extra bad puns.
Don't. Okay, that's fair.
I, for one, prefer to live in the past.
Don't we all?
I mean,
okay.
Most of my stuff is there.
So. Oh, that's interesting. Is that going to work now? Okay, I'm gonna switch over to the main screen. There we go. Okay, it wasn't showing up on my preview, but it worked. My lovely little overlay I made.
Aww.
So, I've got in front of me a whiteboard. Hi. It is indeed. Oh, I don't have the
I miss
pencil.
these guys.
Hi. I have very bad penmanship on a tablet. So I'll kind of be playing around with stuff on here just to kind of organize things and give people a little bit of visualization. Because there is a lot of information. Let me get my notes. I've been extremely nervous about the stream because I don't really know how this is gonna go. I figured I would start with like a recap as well as where the plot would eventually end up. So a lot of this is going to be new information for you guys too. And then talk about some characters and then kind of get into the Q&A stuff. I figure eventually the VOD of this will be saved on Twitch immediately and later, probably like tomorrow on YouTube. And then I will probably go back in and edit it down to get a more concise version and then re-upload that. Or upload it, I should say. But anyway, I figured I'd start with an overall recap. Thank you, Pio. It was an endeavor, believe me. It was something that pretty much dominated my every waking moment for like several years. But yes, we'll start with a bit of a recap over everything, and we'll talk about just stuff. So let me just get rid of all these drawings. So the comic starts with the death of Lana, who is one of the main characters. She was originally the main character, but that kind of got usurped from her a little bit. Lana is the vampire character in the top of the chat box. I'll get a little... Yeah, there she is. Hi, Lana. So that's Lana. First things that happens is she dies. She gets pushed onto a trap and gets killed by an arrow, and she dies immediately. She's an adventurer, a rogue.
And somehow that's when her life starts.
Somehow that is when her life starts. She then wakes up in front of a man in a black robe. Can't see his face. It's all, you can't tell anything about him. And he reveals that he raised her as a vampire. So now Lana is a vampire. on life. Good stuff. I will take a small detour at this moment to talk about. So that the character in the black robe ends up being a character named Aldrin, who we learn his name later. Allow me to put him on the board with his stupid hood. So that's Aldrin. So they meet each other, and he is teaching Lana about some stuff. She is learning how to use her vampiric powers. She decides to multi-class into wizard for a reason that ended up being pointless. I had a plan for that originally. It just didn't work.
We'll hear all about it later, don't worry.
Yeah. So,
I mean, plans not working is probably one of the most realistic things about the comic, right?
yeah, no kidding. Okay, so Lana and Aldrin, he's kind of teaching her how to be a vampire. He's not a vampire, weirdly enough. But a side note about Aldrin is that before I came up with a name for him, there's a reason why he was only dressed in black and in a robe and had no face, had no name, nothing. Because in the original version of this comic, it was going to be a much more gimmicky thing. Aldrin was literally going to be the dungeon master. He was literally the voice of the dungeon master. So he didn't have a name. He would tell people that he's got many names and he's known across the land as so many different people and blah, blah, blah. And it was just going to be a big joke that, oh, he's literally the voice of the dungeon master. But then people started paying attention to the comic. People started reading it, and a lot more people started reading it than I expected. And I kind of thought, maybe I can make something out of this. So
how far into the story did you kind of make that pivot?
Not far. I would say 10 comics. I was at the point where I was like, okay, this is probably going to expand into an actual story. So Aldrin was originally going to be the literal dungeon master. That comic didn't have legs, basically. That was a comic that would have led up to that joke and then been like, eh.
That's how every D&D plot I design is.
Was his brother already a character before that swap over and became his brother, or did he get invented after?
No, Eldon was invented afterward, after I kind of started coming up with their backstory. And a lot of that stuff kind of changed in that moment. And I started thinking a lot longer term because I wanted to tell that story. But anyway, they met a ghost. That ghost name was Kalinor, or Cal for short. I almost forgot what his full name was.
My boy!
Cal is a bit of an idiot, but he's an illusionist ghost, which we will find is... I like doing unexpected things, so there's a lot of illusionists in my stories. But they meet Cal, they befriend Cal, sort of. And more so, I think he just kind of tags along.
They tolerate Cal.
They tolerate him. That continues on for a while, and then, of course, they meet... they get attacked by some bounty hunters, led by a tiefling. That tiefling's name is Karis, and that is the point when we realize... Well, Aldrin's name is revealed, and we find out that him and Karis are a thing. They've been together they were together until Aldrin disappeared for many years. That'll come up later. So they continue exploring, or at this point, they basically escape from the ruins that they're in up north in the mountains of North Haven. And they go to the town of North Haven itself. I guess on the way, they meet an illusionist. Like I said, lots of illusionists. An illusionist named Finks. Turns out to be a lich. They ride his airship, and then they steal his airship.
And then I seem to recall him departing the airship.
He did, in fact, depart the airship very violently. So they take Finks's airship and he gets dropped, but not destroyed. He survives and regenerates. But anyway, the anti-heroes, as their party has come to be known, it's never mentioned in the comic. That just kind of came like the fan slang, which I think is kind of funny. So they have the airship. They arrive in the town of North Haven itself, and there, Karis brings them to their hideout. What level is Finks? He never seemed high enough. That's an awfully good question that I don't have an answer to, but I will come back to that because it is kind of relevant to something in a bigger picture. So they go to North Haven. They kind of fool around with some stuff. They meet. Oh, wow! I didn't realize I introduced Laris that early, but Lana, while she is on one of her adventures in the city, meets Laris Ardenwood, a vampire hunter. Haha. But he doesn't really cause any problems and she gets away.
I have to say, writing interactions between Laris and Lana were my favorite. Those were just some of the best sass back and forth.
I really liked Laris, and spoilers, I intended for them to get together at the end of the comic. They were each other's love interests.
Would he be vampired?
No.
Oh. That's progressive.
Laris was trying his best.
Might have turned into a werewolf, though.
Yeah, that's true. Laris definitely suffered a little bit from Flanderization. Like, in his first appearance, I think I intended him to be a lot more competent than he was, and it just kind of kept sliding downhill from there. But he was fun to write. In any event, he shows up, makes his appearance, but bigger things are on the way. Namely, I have way too many things open at the moment. Another force rears their head in North Haven, and that is the Ivory Veil, or at least a division of paladins from the Ivory Veil shows up, led by Aldrin's brother Eldon. In order to make their escape, they try to make their escape on the airship, but Eldon cuts them off. There's a big fight. It is revealed that both Aldrin and Eldon have black wings. Interesting. And then before the large spire in North Haven collapses and hurts anyone, the anti-heroes teleport away because of Aldrin. So they disappear. Aldrin and them ports them to safety. Eldon then has to report back to his master about his failure. And Finks's body gets destroyed for the first time. So he's done. They go away. Laris kind of goes wherever. And oh, you know what? I completely forgot. I have portraits for the others. There's Andil. There's Maldera. And where is he? There's Hillmore. Elven fighter, human sorcerer, I believe. Pretty sure she was a sorcerer, not a wizard.
I think so. She charmed snakes, I think.
Yes, she did. Which was an inside joke for us. And only
yes.
us.
Did I play her in a D&D campaign? Well, by campaign I mean one session.
Under a different name. Like,
okay.
In the comic, she was named Laldera, I think. And then your character was Laldesriel, who I think might have been an elf.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, those are the heroes. They were meant to be incompetent from the beginning. Because... Let's go away, quick tip. I don't know. I always thought it was funny coming into this from the perspective of the heroes are stupid and incompetent and can't get anything done and dysfunctional, whereas this group of quote unquote evil characters, or supposed to be evil characters, are the ones who are actually solving problems. But anyway, yeah, so they escape from North Haven. Aldrin plane shifts them away. How constraining did you find it to follow the Order of the Stick footsteps and have to justify things in D&D mechanics? Kind of restraining. I'll touch more on that when I talk about like overall themes and stuff later, because that is relevant. But there were a few things. I actually stumbled upon a little notepad document I had in my folder that I actually wrote down the initiative of characters for certain fight scenes. I remember actually like rolling initiative for everybody and then writing it all down, and then in the comic playing it out, because in, I think it's issue 200 of Order of the Stick, it's when they fight Miko, I think, in which Rich Burlew, the creator of Order of the Stick, has gone on record to say that he actually rolled initiative for every character in the party, and they act in that initiative in the comic. And I always thought, hey, that's kind of a cool idea. That's a neat little detail. So I did that a couple times, but I didn't stick to it for reasons that we'll get there. So, all right, so these guys reappear. Element eraser. There we go. So Aldrin plane shifted them out. They reappear in a forest. A forest south of North Haven. That's when we first learn about Aldrin's mysterious origin, because Lana confronts him about it. And it is in that point. Let me just kind of hold up. Where does this go? Okay, so this is them going to like the Valley of the Night. So I'm going to draw like a weird tower here for. I remember vaguely what that tower looked like. I don't know why I'm drawing with a mouse. So that's where they're going. These guys are going to be in Tidaris, which is the big thing like that. That's that palace. Laris is unknown. Heroes unknown. So these guys are kind of in just a forest right now. This is at the point where we learn Aldrin's backstory, that the icons are a little crude. I didn't draw a whole lot of new art for this. My apologies. But we learned that Aldrin and Eldon are twins, and they are the result of a... Oh god, what is their official name? It's not Demon. Or is it Demon? I don't remember. Infernal? I can't remember what the D&D name is for it, but basically, they are the product of a demon and a celestial or angel getting together, and Aldrin and Eldon are their offspring for whatever reason. There's reason behind that, because hold on. A long time ago, there is a source book that deals with some adult subjects in tabletop role-playing. I remember looking at that book when I was a young and stupid teenager, and I remember... Whoa. Ketro, you are the first person to redeem that. Dang.
Oh.
Okay. Well, you gotta go to my channel. So there is a source book that deals with like adult subjects in D&D and tabletop gaming, And in that book, there is a chart in which hold on. Oh, sorry, Ketro. I can't gift you a sub because you're already subbed. You're already subbed, so I can't gift you one.
Oh, look at this generous boy.
But anyway, so I'm getting off track. I'll revisit that in a moment. So there, in the source book, there's a chart that lists what all the different D&D species can intermingle, so to speak. And if you want to choose someone, Ketro, please do. But there was very specifically a spot on this chart where like demons or infernals and celestials could not mate with each other. And I remember seeing that and thinking to myself, well, that's weird. Like, who are they to say that these two different species can't get together and bump uglies? And that is literally where Aldrin and Eldon's heritage comes from, is a stupid third-party source book talking about naughty stuff in D&D. How old was I at the time? Like 19? So I wasn't that young, but I was still young enough and stupid. I downloaded a whole schwack of PDFs for D&D stuff because I was really into D&D at the time, and that book was in there. And so I remember flipping through it, and it's not good. It's a terrible book. Like, it's absolutely awful. But I remember that chart, and that stuck in my head. So, in my world, a celestial and a demon got together, had twins, and they're characters in the story. I'm gonna put them down here. How old was I when I started the comic? About the same age. It would have been... but yes, Ketro, if you want to choose someone to give a sub to, please do. And I will do that. But, so yes, we learned that Eldon and Aldrin are twins of a celestial and a demon from a long time ago. They're quite a bit old. They're like 200 years old, just under 200. And yeah, there we go. So what even happens next? Next, they have a brief period where they stay over in a small village. They learn that they are now being hunted by the Ivory Veil from a different branch of the Ivory Veil, led by someone we will meet later. But meanwhile, while this is going on, we move on over to the capital of, I guess, the Ivory Veil as an organization, Tidaris, in the palace, where we meet my personal favorite character, Zuri. Zuri chews into Eldon a bit. They get into it, they argue. We also meet our villain, who I don't have official art for, but
looks real imposing and shifty, though.
That is his head that appeared in the comic very briefly. So yes, we also meet our main villain, Ardaris. I realize I have a lot of names that start with A, and I hate it as much as anybody else. But I just kept finding names I liked that started with A, and they stuck. So our villain, Ardaris, is in control. He is the leader of the Ivory Veil. He's basically the god, so to speak, demigod in this case, that everyone was worshipping. Eldon and his paladins got their powers directly from Ardaris as a god, basically, to speak divinely, which is ironic because Eldon is not a paladin. He's a fighter. Well, he's a cleric and a fighter. Mechanically speaking. Zuri is part of a different branch. She is the leader of the special forces. Basically doing subterfuge, special assignments, stuff like that. I believe it is around this time where we find out that Finks is not dead. Finks has been reconstituted.
Well, still dead.
He is still dead, technically speaking. But he's been reconstituted. And he is working with Zuri. They have a plan that they're going to put into motion. I don't remember if this happens now or later. Might be later, but we do learn that. Oh, I zoomed in. There we go. So, okay, so yes, I did reveal Finks at that point. So Zuri has a plan for Finks, sends him off to go do that. Eldon has his own plan, and he is determined to do it his way. So he gathers up his boys and goes to where Aldrin and his cohorts, the anti-heroes, are going. So at the very beginning of the comic, Aldrin basically says he wants to go to a place called the Valley of the Night, where there is a horrible creature living there that owes him money. So, sure enough, they get to the Valley of the Night, where there is an extended Wizard of Oz joke, and then they get into the tower. Aldrin meets his old friend, and it turns out that friend is just a gnome named Turek, and a very old gnome. Let me get his lovely face on here. So Turek is in the Valley of the Night, so they get over there. Turek basically reveals that the whole Valley of the Night has been pretty much turned into a giant theme park because adventurers just keep coming there. And so he said, rather than stick around and make it into some kind of, dungeon, he embraced the the merchandising side of it and made it into his own thing. So that's that. He also reveals a lot more about what's going on in the big picture. So let me think for a moment. Okay, I've got to get this out because I can't stop thinking about it. There was one of the stupidest mistakes I ever made making the comic is I made a place called the Valley of the Night, which is perpetually night there. And so I had the main characters. I remember talking to you about this, Chris, so you might remember this. But the anti-heroes got there, they hung out, they spent the night, and the next day I made a comic panel in which it was day outside. One of the windows was blue outside, and I might have uploaded it before I caught it. I can't remember.
I remember this.
I remember seeing it and then thinking to myself, like, wait, like, it's literally the Valley of the Night. Why did I put a blue sky? So I had to go back into the comic, change the sky color, and then I think re-upload it like a few minutes later. And I felt so stupid about that. And it's forever burned in my memory. So that was that. Anyway, I'm going to actually...
See, I would have left it, and then the next page had a panel where they're walking outside confused, and there's like a mural on the side of a wagon, and that's what they were actually looking at.
Right, the sun wagon.
You know what's funny? I was looking at the comic a bit earlier, and at the end of the Lavicport arc, when Karis and Lana are sitting on the rooftop, they're watching the sunrise. Lana is a vampire.
So I think what you're
Damn
saying
it.
is like there's no real sun in this world. It's all just like magic and subterfuge and illusion. That's the only explanation.
I probably would
At
have
the
made
end,
the
we
same
find out
mistake.
the entire thing is. At the end, we find out the entire thing is actually a theme park. No.
But I thought
Lana's
that was
actually
fun.
not a vampire. She just has fake fangs.
I never realized it until like literally like a couple hours ago when I was looking at it, and I just stopped. I was like, hold on, something about this doesn't seem right. Anyway,
we can fix it in the director's cut, you know.
yeah, exactly. So I'm going to swap over to the comic page itself here to talk a little bit more in detail. Also, a quick look behind the scenes of our fancy admin tools on the website.
Hey, they got the job done.
They sure did. I just find it funny because it's one of those things where you always wonder what the behind the scenes looks like. Well, it looks like this. It's not much.
It's pretty straightforward.
But it gets it done.
By the way, I checked because you mentioned earlier when the website was made, and the earliest file I can see is like April 2008. So that's when we started creating it, I think.
Yeah, it would have been April. I remember specifically the comic being posted on the Giant in the Playground in January because it was right. I think I was in school. I was in college at the time, and I remember making and posting those over my Christmas break.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't move off site until a while later. What is this? This one. That's the one I want. See, there's our Derek. Fancy glowing eyes. All right, so they arrive at the Valley of the Night. They talk to Turek, who reveals himself to be a prophet. He is a diviner. And he was on a council of other people along with Aldrin's father, whose name was Cyril. I never really liked that name, but I couldn't come up with anything better before the comic got published.
Needs more A's.
Yeah. So he served on a council of supposedly all evil people, quote unquote, with a whole bunch of different. Everybody had their own title. Turek was the prophet. Aldrin's father, Cyril, was the judge, as it says here. There was the warlord, the Joker. I actually had a list of all of them. Let's see if I still got it here. Yeah, Black Council titles. So the complete list that I had was the judge, who is Aldrin's father, the executioner, who I didn't have someone pinned down to actually be yet. Some of these probably would have gotten cut. The priest, the aristocrat, who was Ardaris, which I now cannot say without thinking of the joke, the aristocrats. There was the knight, who I didn't have anyone pegged for that one either. The Inquisitor, who would eventually be revealed as being Quentus. The Joker, who was Finks's grandfather, also an illusionist. The Warlord, who would have been a character that would have come up much later. The Thief, the Prophet, who was Turek. The Monk, and the Shepherd, who was a vampire patriarch, who we actually saw in the comic. He is in Laris's flashback. The guy that poisons the well of healing water, that would have been the vampire patriarch who served on the Black Council. Again, he would have come up later. I think. Do I have a? No, I didn't make a little pog for him. Did you ever try to get to the point where the giant would let you use a swear word? It was an old post from him saying you created something like a 150-page comic. You might be allowed to swear once on the forums. I didn't. I actually, now that you mention that, it's something I was thinking about earlier. I never had any contact with Rich from Order of the Stick at all. None. I've never spoken to him. I've never emailed him. I've never received any information from him. Nothing. Despite running this webcomic for however many years and having people on the forums being convinced that me and Rich were the same person secretly. I've never spoken to the man.
Well, notice he's not on this call, so as far as I'm concerned, that theory still has
credibility.
Yeah,
still got legs. So we learn about the Black Council, we learn about Turek serving on it, and we learn about Ardaris specifically. Ardaris was the bad guy. He wanted to take over the council and basically take over the world. He wanted people to worship him, essentially. He was obsessed with becoming a god. And he was extremely dangerous. I'll talk about his backstory a bit later. But he was very dangerous, and Cyril saw this and came up with a plan to imprison him they basically created a new plane, dimensional plane, to imprison Ardaris, seal him away, and then never have to think of him again, because they don't want to do that. He's a demigod. He's half immortal. He doesn't age. He's hard to kill. Just lock him away and throw away the key. Forget about him. But everything goes wrong. Ardaris doesn't flip it, but he gets imprisoned, but something goes wrong. Ardaris kills Aldrin's father, and through the cracks in the prison, Ardaris now communicates to the physical plane through the Ivory Veil. That's Ardaris' basic setup. And it's Aldrin's setup for his revenge story. He wants revenge on Ardaris for killing his father before he ever knew him, like 200 years ago. So that's that. The Ivory Veil is set up as a big organization to basically spread worship and control of Ardaris across the world without him really showing his true side. Hence, Ivory Veil. Ivory because white, very clean, pure. Veil because they are literally covering the eyes. They are providing a screen over what Ardaris was. So, that all gets explained. Before too much more can happen, Eldon and his paladins arrive. I guess there isn't a fight because they just give up, I think. They get captured. I'm pretty sure that's what happens. So, Eldon captures them, takes them back to Tidaris, to the White Palace, which is where everyone else is waiting. Turek remains... No, Turek doesn't remain in the Valley of the Night, but Turek goes off to do his own thing. I'll put him in unknown lands. Get up there. I think it's around this point that we find Laris in the woods. Oh, right. That did happen. So back before they got to the Valley of the Night, Lana and Laris reunited. Laris described his backstory, that he used to be a vampire, but he discovered a cure for vampirism. He ingested it. He found a spring of water, took some water, ingested it, cured his vampirism, and then his vampire patriarch found out, poisoned the well, so to speak, and then Laris fled, ran away, and decided that he would become a vampire hunter because they robbed the world of probably the most important thing, one of the most important discoveries in the world. So he was a tad bit upset about that. But he still had a vial of the water with him that he offered to Lana to cure her vampirism if she so desired. She took it. She didn't drink it, but she took it with her. And then he gets struck by lightning a whole bunch by a druid.
As you do.
And gets left behind while the others escape and go to the Valley of the Night. Then all the other stuff happens. So at this point, Laris unites with the heroes, and he signs up with them to go and do whatever it is that they're going to do. Back in Tidaris, Eldon and everybody else arrives at the White Palace. We are introduced to... Where is he? To the captain of the palace guard, Rowlet. Finks is gone. He is in Nowhere Land as well. Oh, you go too, Aldrin. So they're captive. We introduced Rowlet. I guess this is also the point where we introduce Quintus. Hey, Quintus. So they're in prison. They eventually find a way to escape, although it's revealed that the cells that they were being kept in were never locked in the first place. They wanted, basically, Ardaris set the whole thing up so that they would be free to go once they figured it out. Because Ardaris is a schemer. He likes to build plans, and he had a big plan in motion. So they think that it's their big heist and that they need to escape, but they need to get charts from the library in the White Palace to find the temple at which what's the word I'm thinking of? The ritual to seal Ardaris was originally done at a palace somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The prison exists on another plane, but to open the portal to that plane, they need to find the temple where the ritual was originally done. And so they need to find the charts. So Aldrin goes and does that. Runs into Quintus again. They know each other. Lana fights Zuri for the first time. Karis does not fight anybody. Instead, she gets escorted by Rowlet to Ardaris, has an audience with the big bad guy, and he basically explains to her that maybe Aldrin isn't everything that she expects him to be. She doesn't she's maybe putting her trust a little too much into him, but plants that seed of doubt in her, at least. That is what he does. Will you be able to read the whole story with the ending somewhere in text? The video, the VOD of this will be up on Twitch immediately after, and I probably will be editing down again. I don't know if I will write it all out at some point, possibly, or there might also be something else in the works of some sort of like transcribing. If there is, I will be posting it on probably on antiheroescomic.com. So if whatever form that this takes afterward, it will be on the website as soon as possible. So yes, the seed of doubt is planted in Karis. The antiheroes rally and they leave. They are going to the town of Lavicport. It is at this point that, or it was in the middle of that arc that Alex, you took over, and then you guys led into, what was the story arc that you guys led into after the White Palace? I honestly can't remember. Hang on.
We had a couple of filler arcs mixed in with, let's see.
The Bard Convention. Oh, right. We went back to
that one.
Talaris and the heroes. Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite things. I actually reached out to Scott Kurtz and got permission to use Giacomo as just a side character.
Oh, really?
Cameo. But yeah, so we And that's the that is the one where Delithus actually put us in the background there. So that is bald-headed me and him going over things, and then there's another panel with you guys and an orb. But yeah, so it was back to the heroes and getting trapped in a city. And if I remember correctly, the point of getting trapped in the city is they were trapped in a city that they were trying to get out of, and it was the same city where the anti-heroes were trying to get into. And so the long-term goal was to get both groups together again.
Okay. And that wasn't the point where they met up with Turek, was it? That was later, I believe.
Yeah, because Turek we gave his own side arc with the Bugbear Maid that I don't remember if we ever gave her a name.
I didn't give her a name, so I don't know if you guys
did.
Did.
That was a bit of a filler arc while we were working on getting plot to turn into script.
Issue 345 is just name testing. Just a lowercase t.
Was it always?
No, it had a name.
I don't think so.
Did I do something? I don't know.
Maybe. That's funny though.
There was a joke about soggies in the title. I remember that because it was Captain Crunch.
Yes, it was. I remember that now.
It was something isn't the only thing that gets soggy.
Yeah.
Huh.
I remember that now that you mention it. So that all goes down, and then the Lavikport arc begins. The anti-heroes arrive in Lavikport. You guys wrote and did the art, but I did provide the skeleton for it because I had those plot beats written out. What was I going to say? Fun fact, I actually made... okay, here we go. Random Star Wars fact. I'll do a random anti-heroes fact. There exist 2 comics from this arc that I made that are never released.
Wait, what? When?
Many years ago. I think it was 2012. 2012 is the date that I have on the comics, but they are complete comics, all dialogue, it's all finished. It's basically ready to post. That would have started the Lavikport arc, but I made them, I think, when I had some free time, and I thought, well, maybe I can come back to this. But I made the 2 comics and was like, nah, this is too much. I can't keep this up, so I never released them. I don't remember if I ever showed anyone, but they exist. I've still got them on my hard drive. Maybe I'll upload them at some point.
On that same token, somewhere or another, I've got a good 20 pages of script if we'd ever been able to take off on it again. But
I also more recently, like within the last few years, went back and upgraded some of the art. If you actually look at the characters on the stream above the chat box, they've got their updated art style with like the actual fully rendered hands and sleeves and everything. Which again never appeared in the comic, but Rich did that in Order of the Stick a long time ago, and it took me a while to figure out how he managed to do it. But when I figured it out, I drew new art for it. But again, it was just like, this is a lot of work. If I could do it full time, I would. But it was just too much work for what it was. But I figured, hey, I might as well show off the actual art that I made. So they go to Lavikport. Does Aldrin look exactly like his twin? We'll get there. They get to Lavikport. They need to find a ship because they can't just they can't teleport to the temple because they don't know where it is. It's out in the middle of the ocean, somewhere hidden. It is protected by all sorts of like scrying magic. Nobody can scry and see what this place is. Nobody can find it. A diviner can't. They need an actual chart to find it, which is why they stole the charts from the White Palace. Now they just need to get a ship to sail them there. So they go and find a ship. They meet up with Turek. I had the skeletons of this, but I didn't actually do the art, so I don't remember exactly how everything happened. From what I know, I think you guys stuck pretty close to what I had. But yeah, they escape from Tidaris. They go to Lavicport. Finks is in unknown lands. Let's make this Lavicport. Let's erase first here. Lavicport. Let's make a nice little boat. A lovely boat. So they get to Lavicport. They meet up with Turek, and we learned that this is kind of like Lana's hometown. This is where she was an orphan. Lana is an orphan, sadly. But her orphanage was in Lavicport, and she reunites with a bunch of people that she used to be there with. Specifically, what was his name? Alan, I think? Yeah. Specifically, an old friend of hers from the orphanage named Alan. And they basically want her to come with them, join them on their, thieving escapades. But, she says that she has a family now, like with Aldrin and Karis and Cal. She has a new family. She trusts them. She's going to go with them. And I don't remember exactly what the plot beats were.
The big thing with this one that I really enjoyed was that she had been obsessed over them as the perfect previous family. Like, she had huge good memories of it and had thought they had all died and found out they were all still alive. But we find out that a lot of that had been kind of hidden trauma, and her last memory was actually of being abandoned in the orphanage when it was burning by Alan.
Yes.
That's kind of that mental break where she's like, oh, wait, you left me behind. Just like the leader of the other team, everybody leaves me behind. And it was a huge push towards her her feeling like she can only trust herself.
Right.
Which I think was also kind of really putting the seeds for her not trusting Aldrin as much as well.
Funny you should say that, because in that scene at the end of that arc, the idea was that basically she saw them as her family, but then they betrayed her. But she sees these people as her family now, and she probably trusts more in Karis than anybody else. Karis is basically her, like, a mother figure at this point. So she confesses to Karis that basically she trusts her, and Karis in turn trusts Aldrin, ? And she's just gonna go along with what their plans are because A, she doesn't really have anything else to do, and B, the trust is there. Is Cal an orphan? No, I don't. I'll probably go over Cal's backstory a bit later because it was less defined, but I don't think he was an orphan. I don't know what Cal was like when he was alive. I'll be honest. A little bit, but I wouldn't say that he was an orphan. So yes, so that all happens with Lana. Lana and Karis confesses her trust, and then they meet up with Turek. And then, because I didn't actually give you guys the next step in the plot, we cut away to the whole werewolf arc, I believe.
That dragged a lot longer than I was expecting. I thought that was going to be 10 pages tops, and we got to 10 pages. I'm like, I'm only a quarter of the way through. No.
I always had the opposite problem. I feel like I rushed through stuff all the time, but
Over the years, I have had multiple people refer to my writing as, "Wow, you're a wordy bastard, aren't you?" Like literally that exact phrase. Multiple people that don't know each other have said this.
Fair enough. So, did you want to go into detail on the werewolf arc?
Sure. I mean,
Reveal anything?
yeah. So, with the werewolf arc, we had some fun with the idea that Turek was leaving the Valley of the Night for a while because things got a little hot, all pun intended. And we brought back with him, there was the maid that was a bugbear that had been like a cameo character, and she basically became his traveling companion.
She's on the stream. She's right here.
And they basically came across a tourist trap, all pun intended, in which somebody was offering like a 3-night stay at this resort, and promising fun times, etc. And
Well,
sorry, I had some background noise going on
no
there.
Worries. No worries.
And so basically, them and a bunch of random people all get transported on a wagon to this castle out in the middle of nowhere, and they're provided badges that tell them who they are. And if anybody is familiar with the classic game of Werewolf, basically you have one, maybe a few people that are a werewolf. Everybody else is a villager, or sometimes there's some other special roles. And the idea is that you play it in rounds. The werewolves kill somebody, and you have everybody look down and hide, and the werewolves look up and point to the person that they want to kill, and the person running the game knows. And so they tell everybody who died and how. Everybody argues over it, and then somebody gets lynched once everybody agrees we think that person is the werewolf. And if they are the werewolf, then you've won the game. If they're not the werewolf, then you have another night phase, and the werewolf kills somebody else. And so basically, this tourist trap was its own type of theme park, and Turek knew this all along. Like he was very obvious on everything, that he knew these were gags going on. He made compliments about the special effects. We were trying really hard to make it clear the whole way through that he wasn't scared. There was no reason to be, and even though people were apparently dying in massive bloodshed, he wasn't worried. And the whole thing ends up being, at the end of it, ends up being that the person running it is actually a succubus who is running this game because it is a way for her to draw off emotions, and there's a massive emotional rush of the people arguing and the dying. And at the end of that plot line, he actually offers to hire her to come back to the Valley of the Night and run some things for him.
Okay.
And then one of the behind the scenes thing, as far as I can remember, nobody caught it in the comments. There's the hotel rooms that they're all staying in. The carpet on the floor and the lamps that are in the room are from the Bates Motel.
Huh.
So we were using background pieces from Psycho.
See, that's
potential.
That's neat. I don't know what the temple would have looked like.
It looks like we're looking down on the Lincoln Memorial from above.
A little bit. All right. So that's
wow. Yeah.
I guess fun fact, I've never played Werewolf, but I have played Mafia, which is it's on the surface the same game. Chris and I have played a lot of Mafia over the years.
Oh yes, many themes.
Yeah, it's very much the same game.
I find that Mafia was played a lot on forums, but nobody ever actually plays it in real life, which is weird. But that's my Mafia story. You're welcome.
Most often I played Werewolf in the green room of Vampire LARPs. We all played Werewolf waiting for game to start.
That's good
And
stuff.
now there's Among Us. So really, we were trendsetters.
Oh my god. I never made that connection before, but you're absolutely right.
I want to play a game of Werewolf again just so I can point at somebody and be like, dude, sus.
Right.
Or just
We didn't
sus.
have the terms back then.
It's true.
It was an undiscovered frontier.
All right, so Werewolf arc happens. Turek is reunited with the antiheroes. They hire a ship to take them into the ocean to go to the temple, which I have crudely drawn here. It probably would not have looked like this. I don't know. I never actually designed it. But I remember thinking it would basically be like a temple built on top of like a tiny little spit of like craggly land. Very inhospitable. Nobody lives there. It's just this crappy little thing in the middle of the ocean. That's what I would have made it. So they're going there. They're on the way. The trip is, I guess in my notes here, it says the trip is largely uneventful. They eventually... Oh, there would have been one thing that would have happened during this that would have set something up for later. Basically, Aldrin probably would have cast a spell or something would have happened that would almost hit other people on the ship. It would have like swung by, or Aldrin throws a fireball and everybody ducks under it. And, you know, it's a funny joke. But everybody ducks, including Turek. Interesting. So later, they arrive at the temple. It's a tiny little island. Very rocky. An unimpressive temple built on top. They all get there. Hello, everyone. I just realized, too, that... Because the werewolf arc takes place before Lavikport, right?
I think they kind of... We set it up that they were technically taking place at the same time. Like,
Okay.
because the Turek and the maid were leaving on the wagon when the party got to Lavikport.
Okay.
Like, they barely missed each other, if I recall.
Okay, then it still would have worked. My plans still would have worked. I don't remember if I actually told you about them or not, but
Yeah, you did, and
Okay.
there is a panel where there's a place where that could have happened once you mention it.
Okay.
We did work in for that to be a foreshadow.
So what we're talking about is once they get to the temple, like one of the first things that happens is Aldrin throws a fireball right at Turek and just blows him up. Why? Well, it turns out the Turek that has been with them the entire time is actually Finks in disguise again. Aldrin figured it out when he ducked under whatever it was, that, you know, if it was the real Turek, he knows how tall he is. He's a gnome. He wouldn't duck under something that, you know, would go wide over his head. So he figured it out that, hey, something's not right here. So they find out it's actually Finks again. So they tie him up. Turns out he is reporting. So Turek is not actually here. He's over here. Finks is. So they tie him up, put him off to a corner because Aldrin didn't want to say anything sooner because he wants Ardaris to think that the plan is working. And now that they're under protection of the temple's wards, nobody can scry on them. Nobody can tell that, okay, they know what's up. So Aldrin played along until they were out of the way of prying eyes, and then he reveals what's going on. So Finks is incapacitated, put in a corner, just told to sit tight. We got stuff to do. At this point, Aldrin begins preparing for the ritual. He is going to... This was supposed to be the culmination of everything, and like the reason why he encouraged Lana to multi-class into wizard, why he made her a vampire, why he's been doing pretty much everything up to this point in the comic. Unfortunately, some of those things got a bit lost in translation for my own fault. So some of them, I probably would have been able to figure out a way to tie everything together and be like, okay, this makes sense. But I never really did it. So, and again, this is all new information. This was never published. I don't know if I even shared all this information or not. So Aldrin starts setting up the ritual. It is at this point that the prophecy that Turek talked about would have been revealed, which again I never actually wrote. I did write a crude version of the prophecy here, which is as written: on the eve of the 201st day, descendant blood will sacrifice blood of another and restore the truth that was denied. I never liked it, but that's what I wrote. So, by Aldrin's interpretation, it means one of the descendants of their father, Eldon or himself, would sacrifice... One of the brothers basically would sacrifice the other to open a portal to the plane where Ardaris was being imprisoned. Aldrin's plan was to exploit a loophole where he gets Lana to drink his own blood and fool it into thinking that she is a descendant. Since she's undead, she can't be killed again. So there's nothing to worry about.
Which, if I recall, was why you were having her be a wizard, because she was going to get a nat 20 on her arcane check and point out some reason why that wouldn't work, but then point out that she actually hadn't had a sip of his brother back beforehand. That was. I know you were playing around with that, whether or not to go that direction.
There was going to be some kind of wrench being thrown into things there, as far as that goes. But as for where that goes, okay, so I can't remember what all information I actually sent to you guys, but everything that happens in this section, you're aware of, right? You've seen that.
Yeah. Everything that happens in the temple, I've got that plot line.
Do you have anything for after?
Nope, that was where you cut it and said it was going to be a good volume break. So I am as in the dark going forward here. I'm looking forward to that. Okay,
so while they're in the temple, they start doing the ritual. Everything seems to be going fine. Aldrin reassures Lana, everything's great. It's, just trust me. I should point out, up to this point, Aldrin's robe has been slowly falling apart. With every consecutive adventure, more and more of his robe gets destroyed, and that was
like Prince of Persia.
Yeah, it was very much thematically on purpose, because the whole facade of him being trustworthy was basically being broken down piece by piece, until this point, in which he is beginning the ritual. Everything seems to be fine until it isn't. At some point in this, during the ritual, the magical energy sparks to life. Lana is the focal point, and she just starts to scream. She is in pain, clearly. Obviously, this is very distressing. Karis says, like, okay, this is wrong. Like, we've got to stop this. But Aldrin's not listening. Aldrin has come as far as he can. He is at the point where his plan is being realized. He is about to have his revenge that he's been waiting, like, 200 years for, basically, since he was born. So he doesn't want to hear anything. He is completely laser focused on what's happening, and that is opening that portal. Lana is dying. Not just undead dying, she is being destroyed at this point. The ritual is going to kill her permanently. Lana has confessed to Karis that she trusts her, and Karis takes this to heart and realizes that if she lets this happen, she's doing the same thing that Aldrin did to her. Like, she's betraying this poor, innocent, naive girl, and she realizes that everything that Ardaris told her is basically what's happening, that she's being told to choose between someone who trusts her and between her lover, who is not trustworthy. So, but before that she can make any sort of decision, Eldon busts in, not wearing his uniform, wearing simple clothes, because at this point, Eldon has been removed from. I believe Ardaris basically tells him, "You're staying home. Like, your plans didn't work. We're gonna do what I want to do. We're gonna do what, Zuri and everybody else wants to do. You're staying out of this." But Eldon busts in plain clothes, because he was. Where are my notes here? Right, so he busts in, interrupts Aldrin. They start fighting. At the same time, Karis sees a break in the energy, jumps, tackles Lana, gets her out of the ritual. So Lana is no longer in trouble. She's not dying. She's unconscious. She's in bad shape, but she's not dying. At the same time, as Eldon and Aldrin are having their battle, a ladder descends from a hole in the ceiling. On that ladder is... Oh, that's not the window I need. On that ladder is Laris Ardenwood. The ladder is on the airship that they had back in North Haven that they could not take with them. And on the rest of the airship is everybody else. They're all here. They all followed. The real Turek is there with the heroes and Laris, and they all teamed up and they came to save these people because Turek knows what's going on. At this point, yeah, so they're on the airship, so we would flash back to Laris and the heroes arriving in Lavicport and running into Turek, complaining about a lich who stole his identity. And so they would get together, they would find the airship, and then they would go and search. And basically the way that they found them is Turek used his scrying magic to track the anti-hero's ship for as long as he could until they disappeared beyond the veil of the wards. And then they said, well, they have a heading. They kind of know where they're going, so they'd go there and fly around and try to find them. So that's what they did. And they found them just in time, apparently. So they've got that. They've found the temple. They busted in. Laris is urging everybody to get on board. Cal goes on board. They manage to get Lana on board, though she's still unconscious. Eldon and Aldrin are still battling. They're doing their thing. Karis notably refuses to get on board. She decides she is not going with them. She feels bad for what she did. Her betrayal of trust to Lana. And she says that no, she is going to stay here and she is going to live with whatever punishment seems necessary. So she does not get rescued with everybody else. Eldon and Aldrin are fighting in a bit of desperation. Eldon knows that he can't take Aldrin in a one-on-one fight. So in a bit of desperation, Eldon grabs him, pulls him into the portal that is now collapsing, the unstable portal, and they both disappear from sight. The last thing that Karis sees is Aldrin blinking out of existence and leaving Aldrin's robe behind, or what's left of it. Finks is still there, still tied up, and gets crushed by a piece of falling debris, destroying his body again. And so, this whiteboard app is not very good.
Real quick note, going over a couple of my notes from the script of what we were planning for that. We were absolutely going to copy Obi-Wan Kenobi's robe fluttering to the ground, and the rock that was going to crush Sphinx was going to be the boulder from Indiana Jones' Temple of Doom.
All right, so that is not technically the end of the arc, because the temple falls apart. The privateers that sailed to the island with the anti-heroes begin fleeing for good reason. The airship begins leaving, and the last thing that they basically see is that the island of the temple exploding very violently. A very, very large explosion, and it's pretty much gone. The fate of Karis is unknown. The last thing that they know is she was at the temple. Who knows where she is now? And then we switch to Finks's phylactery. His body has been destroyed, but he reappears in soul form in his phylactery back in the Ivory Palace, or the White Palace in Tidaris. And he is in Ardaris's audience chamber. There he has a brief conversation with Ardaris, who asks him some questions about, did everything go according to plan? Finks tells him everything, tells him everything that happened, that they figured it out. He opened the portal, they got everything went wrong, and then Eldon and Aldrin died. But Ardaris stops him and says, "Did you see them die?" And he says, "Well, no, I saw them disappear and then everything exploded." And Ardaris just tells him, "Okay, thank you. You've been very useful, but unfortunately your usefulness has outlived itself." And Quintus appears behind him, or I should say, at this point we realize Ardaris is not speaking from behind a screen. Ardaris is speaking to Finks in person. He is there, standing there. He is on the material plane. He is not imprisoned on a different plane. He is right there. And Quintus appears behind Finks's phylactery and, with barely any effort, destroys it. Finks is dead. Officially. Finks is actually dead. Dead. Gone. There was much rejoicing. So Finks is dead, and we find out Ardaris is not imprisoned. Ardaris is there. He's been on the material plane the entire time. So then, what's been going on behind the scenes? Cut to some sort of fertile but alien-looking plane. Some weird place. Weird plants, just out of the ordinary, like an orange sky. It's just weird. And immediately after being introduced, the peace and quiet of this place is broken by two figures that drop from the sky. One is Eldon. Pulls himself up, dusts himself off, looks around, and, tries to piece together what just happened, where they are. At that point, another figure pops up out of the bushes, who happens to be naked at this point, and we find out it is his twin brother, Aldrin. No surprise, he looks exactly like his twin brother, just with black.
Just different hair color.
Yeah. I think someone drew some fan art of him a long time ago of what they kind of figured he might look like without his robe on, and it was like, pretty much, yeah, that's kind of the general idea of what I thought. But yeah, the twins, we see Aldrin's face for the first time. He is also completely naked, and there's a joke about him putting pants on and whatnot. But they are also introduced by another voice who tells them to stop beating each other up, start acting like adults, and they turn to see their own father, none other than the demon Cyril, standing right in front of them. And
I recall asking you if this was the case in private chat, and your response being, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Nicely done.
So, yes, the whole thing was that Cyril's plan worked, but Ardaris basically turned the tables, and Ardaris was the one who went free, and Cyril was the one who got imprisoned for 200 years. So he's alive. Their father is alive and well. He's just been living on his own in this alien plane that he created. And that he can't escape from. He's stuck there. His soul is bound to that place. So he talks to them, he explains everything that happened, and they pretty much tell them about everything that's been going on and how the Ivory Veil is a massive cover-up operation, which Eldon takes especially hard. Eldon always believed he was doing the right thing, even though he knew that Ardaris couldn't be trusted. He was convinced that he was doing the right thing but on his own terms, which ends up not being the case. Aldrin also was not doing the right things. But they get sat down by their dad and told, hey, this is what's going on. So that all goes. Cyril gives them some bad news. Oh, right, I was going to have a time skip at this point, which I still wasn't sold on, because it's very cliche to have time move at a different speed kind of thing. I think the way I was going to write it is that time moves at the same speed on the plane itself, but the transit between it compresses time a lot more. Something like that. I don't know. I still never really like it, but I have it written here. So that revelation basically tells them that Ardaris is now already ahead of them. He has presumably stepped up his game to try and take over the rest of the world, get everybody to worship him so that he can become all-powerful. So, it also comes out that Cyril's soul is bound to this plane, but Aldrin and Eldrin are not. So they are free to leave. And sure enough, Cyril, gives them some gifts. He gives Eldon his magical sword. Aldrin, he gives some enchanted robes to wear, which Aldrin does. Although he doesn't wear the hood. He leaves the hood down. And he sends them on their way. They get sent back to the material plane. They reappear in what was left of the temple that they disappeared from. There's a group of treasure hunters scouring the temple for anything of worth. So Aldrin and Eldon take their boat, or jump on, and they head back to Lavikport. Was he naked for the whole conversation? No, he would have gotten some clothes before that point.
What were all those D&D books for?
Hey, listen. Anyway, so yeah, they're on their way back to Lavikport to try and fix the problems that they've caused. They agree on a plan. Eldon is going to go back to the Ivory Veil and act like nothing happened, like nothing changed. Everything is still according to plan. Eldon is on Ardaris' side. He's going to do anything he tells him to do. Aldrin is going to go and start building support from various people to ultimately topple Ardaris. So, where's my thing? Yeah. So, Eldon is going back to Tidaris. These guys are back in Lavikport. Aldrin is probably going to go back to Lavikport. That is his plan. Karis is in unknown. It's in unknown world. Cyril is in his own plane. And the mom is a footnote at this point. So that's their plan going forward. That is the point. This is pretty much the last solid plan that I had for the future of the comic. I do have more plot beats from here, but everything starts getting a lot more hazy. So I'll go through everything that I have written, everything that I can remember, and we'll kind of see where we end up, and then we'll probably answer some questions and whatnot. But yeah, everything from here on out is going to be a lot more disconnected, I guess, because I don't have concrete details. So, back in Lavikport, Lana has been nursed back to health, and she is hiding out with Laris, Cal, the heroes, and Turek. Lately, however, they've been noticing a lot of the Ivory Veil moving through town. They've basically been loading up ships and sailing west to the other continent of Nalsis. And whatever they're doing over there can't be good, but they've been noticing the Ivory Veil is moving a lot of stuff. And Lana's just kind of keeping an eye on it. She actually runs into Zuri at that point. Her and Zuri have another little fight. They attack each other. They kind of jump around buildings because they're both so acrobatic. But Zuri demands to know where Aldrin is, but Lana is confused. As far as Lana knows, Aldrin is dead, and even if he wasn't, she wouldn't want anything to do with him. And Zuri says, interesting. Okay, then you're not really a priority target anymore, so I'm gonna move on. And she leaves. So, interesting that they don't really seem to care about Lana anymore. Lana goes back to the hideout. She finds Aldrin waiting for her there. I didn't really write any details down, but Zuri goes away. So her and Aldrin meet up for the first time since the ritual. They would definitely have some things to say to each other. Or rather, Lana would have some things to say. She basically wouldn't want anything to do with him. She would refuse to talk to him. All that, good stuff for very, very good reasons. In retrospect, I don't know 100% how I would have made or redeemed Aldrin's character at this point, because he was kind of a giant dick. But in the end, he would apologize and admit, okay, I was wrong, but we've got to do what we got to do now. We've got to act, blah, 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 blah. And Lana would reluctantly agree to, okay, what is your plan now? And he says, well, the Ivory Veil is going west. We got to follow them. So we got to go where they're going. And she says, basically, well, they've been moving out for a month now. We're already way behind. And he says, don't worry, I have a plan. And oh, right. At this point, they also Aldrin tells Hillmore, one of the heroes, that they're going to need support of his family, who are big dwarven nobles back in North Haven. So Hillmore goes back to North Haven to gather support for his family. Let's draw some mountains here. So Hillmore goes back to North Haven. He is going to gather support from his family. Everybody else, Aldrin teleports. He does a great big old teleport, sends everybody to the western continent of Nalsis, specifically to a town called Chail Rock, which I believe... Chris, do you remember that map that you drew a long time ago?
Oh yeah, with Port Porton?
Yes.
Oh yeah, what was the name of that world?
I'm pretty sure there was a city... Port Porton. There was a city on that map, or maybe it was a different map that we collaborated on. Maybe it was the one that we made for Primar, I think, that had a city on it called Chail Rock, and that's where I got that name from.
Oh, okay.
So they arrive in Chail Rock. It's a big sprawled out city, port town, and it is on the... I have written down here the western coast of Nalsis, but it should be eastern coast because backwards. Oh, no, I don't want that. Okay, never mind. All right, so they arrive in Chail Rock, and they basically learned that, okay, the Ivory Veil has got us set up on the edge of a desert. They're sending out scouts into the desert, but some of the scouts aren't coming back, and they're trying to find out why. Aldrin and company figure out, okay, whatever they're looking for, we have to go out there and find. We got to find out what they're doing. Again, details would have to be filled in, but here we are. So they go out into the desert, and they they eventually come across the nomad, or a group of nomads out in the desert who, offer some help, or maybe they attack them first and offer help or something like that. Either way, the leader of, maybe not the leader, but one of the nomads in that group ends up being Karis. She's all decked out in like fancy desert gear. She's got like, a big, scarves and everything on, covering her face. She got big goggles and stuff. So it would be at least try to mask the fact of who it is when she first shows up. But it ends up being Karis. She pretty much has the same reaction as Lana to seeing Aldrin again. That, hey, for real? And they have it out. Eventually they come across a magical system that basically allows them... What the heck was this? I had an idea for a long time to have it was basically a magical network that would allow them to monitor pretty much all the movements of the Ivory Veil in real time. And they would like find it by accident, and they would use that to kind of figure out where everybody's going and what they're doing. I guess kind of like magical internet. Yeah, I remember it had a name for it, but I don't remember what it was. It probably started with an A. So they find this thing. Aldrin realizes, oh, hey, we can really use this, so let's do that. Sends them all out, and then they come up with a plan. They decide, okay, we're all gonna split up to go accomplish various things, whatever it is that they're looking for. They've all got to they've got to split up to accomplish different things. Again, I don't remember exactly what everything would have been, but the way it would have worked out is, I guess Karis would be here. They wouldn't be in Lavicport anymore, so Lavicport can kind of go away. So the way that it would bang out, I think what I was going to do is they get interrupted by Quintus. Quintus shows up before they can figure out what their plans are, and in the middle of Aldrin trying to teleport everyone away, Quintus like interrupts the spell, so like half of everybody gets teleported away. It's all just a big mix-up. What ends up happening is Cal and Aldrin end up fighting Quintus. This is, when I was writing this part, I was really into the anime Bleach, so things get a little anime around this point. Shonen anime kind of took over a little bit.
I mean, we already had the two brothers flying around a giant tower
It's
throwing
true.
meteors at each other, so it was already Dragon Ball Z.
It's true. So yeah, Aldrin and Cal would end up fighting Quintus, or holding him off at least. What's funny is that I never actually figured out how Quintus would die. I basically made an invincible character, and I didn't know how I would deal with him. So they would hold him off for a while. Karis would get teleported to some kind of like ruins in the desert where she would meet up with Rowlet. Did I ever read or watch Senyu? I did not. I haven't actually watched or read a lot of manga or anime. I understand a lot of references, but I haven't actually experienced very much. Alright, so these guys, I'm not really sure where those guys would have ended up. What is that white dot? Weird. So yeah. Quintus, Cal, and Aldrin would fight. Zuri and Lana would end up meeting up again, and they would have another fight scene in which Zuri would finally reveal her power level, so to speak. I didn't keep up with comments on the comics, but there was one detail about Zuri that I don't think anybody ever mentioned or noticed, and I'd like to point it out. I need to find a comic with her in it. Faux pas. Yes. So, in every appearance of Zuri in the comic, she has white ribbons in her hair. If you go to the cast page and look at Zuri, she doesn't have those ribbons in her hair, but she's got her sword with a white ribbon on it. That was 100% on purpose because, again, anime. She basically, her whole deal, and this was introduced way back when she first fought Lana. Her whole deal was that Zuri is basically a custom class. She never had a class that was in the game. The whole deal was that she fights using very balanced weapons. Basically, like, her swords are balanced very specifically for her body, for her frame. So, you know, the closer that the balance of the weapon gets to that ideal, the more powerful she gets. And her own sword is bound magically to the ribbons in her hair, and when she pulls them out, ties them together, she gets her sword, which is made for her and makes her incredibly powerful. It's her protege, I think her name was Rosa, was also, that's the reason why Rosa carries so many swords with her, because they're all balanced for Zuri. So she's basically a walking arsenal of swords that are made for her and her mentor. So Zuri finally reveals what her actual sword is, and it turns out Zuri is probably one of the strongest characters in the comic. Like, it is absurd. Like, she can, when she's using that sword, she can move in the blink of an eye. She is super fast, super strong. It's crazy. I don't know where this would have led, but she would have been revealed as a super powered character. As far as like the power rankings in the Ivory Vale goes, she's second and Quentis is first. 100%. So she would do that. She would probably beat the crap out of Lana. I don't know where that would have led, but that would have been their thing. Meanwhile, Rowlet and Karis would have had their fight. Rowlet's whole deal is that he probably would have been like some weird hybrid of classes or like feats and features taken from some weird third-party source books that make him kind of broken. I thought you were saying balanced as in the actual weight of the sword was tuned to her class, and then when she ties ribbons on it, it actually increases weight exactly enough to make it super powered. That's not a bad idea, actually. That's a pretty good one.
I was basically taking it as the swords aren't quite balanced, so it's kind of a I'm not left-handed situation. She puts on the ribbons when she's being serious because she's purposefully hampering herself by not having perfectly balanced swords.
Okay,
That's how I took it.
I kind of worked under the assumption that her sword was magically bound in her ribbons, but again, I think that works better because it's less weird. Again, it's a very Bleach thing.
How many souls are contained in her ribbons?
So that's Zuri. That kind of reveals her deal and her power level. We move over to Rowlet, who is probably the weakest member of the Ivory Vale, ironically. He fights with a weapon that I don't think he was ever posed with in the comic, but he's got like a big two-handed scythe thing. I always liked the design of that thing a lot. It actually ends up coming apart in the middle, and so he's got two like big scythes to fight with, and he's a very good fighter. Like, he's very skilled in combat, but fighting with Karis, she eventually manages to beat him out. Like, I think his whole thing was, wait, I've actually got his backstory written here. Let me see. Yeah, he's not really opposed to what the anti-heroes are doing. He's not really so much a villain, but he fights because he's been told to, and he's very good at it. And Karis does eventually manage to get the better of him. Probably, I think the idea was that she was gonna like use her ranger skills to like bait out a sandworm to actually do a bunch of damage, and that's how she would ultimately win that duel. And so in his like dying breaths, Rowlett would explain that, you know, he comes from a long line of warriors who, you know, a lot of them worked in the Ivory Vale as palace guards and everything. He was just kind of following the footsteps of his father, and that he doesn't have any personal quarrel with Karis at all. He's just kind of happy that he managed to have a pretty good fight like this. He got outsmarted in a way he didn't expect, and so he actually ends up handing down that weapon to Karis. So he would end up giving that weapon to Karis, and then she would use that going forward, which I always thought was kind of cool. I wanted Rowlett to come across as formidable, but not really a bad guy. He's just kind of, not to say he's just doing what he's told, but he's kind of apathetic about it, I guess, until the end. So he ends up losing that fight. He's surviving, basically. So he ends up losing that fight. He joins the pile of dead. Rowlett, the first member of the Ivory Vale, is officially dead. That is probably the last coherent thought that I have. Again, I've got a lot of other bits and pieces. I don't know what would have happened in the fight against Quentis, because I basically made Quentis invincible. I do know that at one point, somehow, Zuri would go away. Oh, yes. Sorry, that isn't my last concrete idea. They would eventually reunite. Oops. Quentis would also go away. While this was happening, Eldon goes back to Tidaris, to the White Palace, and he meets with Ardaris. And Ardaris at this point is hiding behind his audience chamber screen again. He doesn't want Eldon to know what's going on, because again, he wants Eldon to think that he has the upper hand. So Eldon comes back, goes through the whole spiel about, you know, some weird stuff happened, but I'm here now. I'm ready to do your bidding. Whatever you need done, I'm here for it. Ardaris tells him, it's appreciated, but your paladins have been put into the control of someone else, one of your subordinates. That person went off to do what they needed to do, do my bidding. And Eldon asks, well, what is that? Eventually, Eldon finds out that all of the paladins went north to a secluded monastery where their mom was hiding. See, the deal that Eldon and Ardaris struck. Eldon struck a deal with Ardaris saying that as long as you agree to leave my mom alone, because their mom is still living, she's on the material plane, and Eldon says, as long as you agree to leave her alone, I will do whatever you want me to do. I'll carry out your bidding. And he thought that he would play the long game and come up with a plan to, get revenge or whatever needed to happen. Unfortunately, Ardaris figured out what happened when he fell into the portal and met their father, that he decided to scratch the plan, and he sent the paladins to go burn the monastery to the ground and kill everybody involved. So Eldon figures out where they've gone. He goes to where the monastery is as fast as he can, but when he gets there, he's already too late. He finds his mom there dying. They have, an exchange of words, and then I don't remember exactly how it all happens, but he gets, he's really mad. He wants to, fight everybody, kill all the paladins that are there. But who should walk through the door but it's Ardaris in person, because now he reveals that, yep, I'm here. And he, beats up Eldon without too much trouble. And end scene. What happens to Eldon? I don't know. Somehow he ends up with these guys. I don't know how, but he would get there eventually. But their mom is dead. All of Eldon's carefully laid plans have been destroyed. So they continue doing their thing. One of the things that definitely needed to happen is they would have met up with, like I said, the vampire patriarch that poisoned the well and that Laris has a particular grievance with. They would have met up with him. He probably would be a lot more disillusioned. He wouldn't really care about, the vampire thing. He kind of feels like they're fading out of... They're not keeping up. They're fading out of memory. They're falling into obscurity because it really doesn't matter. And, Laris obviously has some words, but he kind of learns some humility, I guess, and learns that maybe these guys aren't worth it. What ends up happening is the vampire patriarch ends up passing leadership of the vampires down to Lana, and she shows that she's young, she's more in tune with she's more in tune with the current times. She's got a TikTok.
With the kids these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does dances on TikTok. So he realizes that, hey, maybe she can kind of lead these guys into a new age. Maybe a new age that isn't where vampires like us aren't vilified and blah, blah, blah. So he passes leadership down to her. Now they've got, a group of vampires on their side to help fight Ardaris. And I remember very specifically wanting to do a scene where Lana and the vampire lord have a conversation while the sun rises. And he would pass all of, his knowledge down to her and talk to her about what's important and don't be like me, basically. And then she would, pull her hood up and go back inside to hide. And he would watch the sunrise for the last time. And then he would just be destroyed after that. I always thought that was a very poignant scene, and I was looking forward to making that. So that's the vampires. They would have run into another barbarian warlord at some point who would have served on the Black Council, and they needed to try and get his support, and lots of little stepping stones like that. One of the plot beats I do remember is at some point some of the heroes, sorry, Turek. At some point the heroes would come face to face with Quentus, and maybe more people than this, I don't know, but at some point they would have run into Quentus and they would fight back, try to enact some sort of plan to take him out. And there would be a scene in which Andil, the elf, gets behind him and ends up stabbing Quentus through with his sword. Straight through. And Quentus got the sword straight through his body, and everybody is shocked. There's a brief moment. Quentus's lifeless corpse falls to the ground, and everybody just kind of stops and realizes, we did it. We killed him. We finally got rid of this incredibly powerful character, this menace. And they all go off to celebrate. Andil stops, looks at the corpse, and takes the mask. Then there would be several, there would be an extended sequence in which Andil is hiding out with everybody. Andil would be acting real weird, and eventually it would come out that Quentis body swapped with Andil as soon as he killed him. So the Andil that we've been seeing is actually Quentis in disguise, and Andil is actually dead. Sorry, Andil. I didn't really have a lot for you to do, and you were kind of a dick from start to finish. But
he abandoned Lana episode 1.
Arguably, he killed her.
Yeah.
So yeah, Andil would be dead, but he would live on. Well, Quentis would live on in his body, leading up to, at some point, his final battle. That was the thing about Quentis that I liked most, is the fact that I basically made an unkillable character. Because if you manage to stab him or like mortally injure him, he'll just swap bodies with you. And then what? And then he walks away with your body. And that's how he's managed to... He's not immortal. He has just swapped bodies for like thousands of years. Oh yeah, he would still have all his powers because it's all mind stuff. He just has to... Maybe he'd be a little rusty, but he'd have to... We're talking about somebody who had mastered psionics like 1,000 years ago. The thing about Quentis, too, is that he also just straight up breaks the rules because his powers affect Cal, and Cal is undead. Psionic powers are not supposed to work on the undead, but he took a feat that lets him do that. Figure quotes. Because that was one of the biggest themes that kind of the comic fell into, is that the rules don't matter. Like, very much toward the beginning, it was kind of structured in a way that was like, okay, here are the rules, this is the way the world works. But as it went along, I wanted to do more of my own thing. And I kind of leaned more and more into the theme that the rules just don't matter. That's not how this world works. And I made the Ivory Veil in a way... Sorry, go ahead.
I always felt too, it felt like the main guide on that was the rules matter, but there's homebrew and nobody knows all the rules.
That was the idea behind the Ivory Veil, essentially, is that they were all, other than Eldon, they were all things that didn't make sense within the rules. Like Zuri's class is a completely homebrew that is built specifically for her. Quentis is a psionic character who is completely broken and breaks literally like the only rules in the book. Rowlet is a combat character who has a whole bunch of like third-party stuff that, when mashed all together, makes him extremely powerful. And Ardaris is a demigod of a species that doesn't exist anymore. He is just some sort of made-up species that was going to be just for this comic. And as time went on, I would just kind of lean more and more into that, because again, I didn't like being shackled by the rules so much. I felt like it was kind of a hindrance, but I liked the idea of things. I felt like that was a strong thematic note for the story overall. So, where were we? So, Andil would be dead, Quentis would be in his body. That was pretty much the last thing I can really think of as like a solid idea. From this point out, I don't know how everything would resolve. Obviously, Quentis would have to be defeated because, I mean, I guess he could survive. He could be opportunist enough to just go into hiding. Zuri would survive. I always intended Zuri to survive till the end. So Quentis's fate would be unknown. Zuri would survive. Contrary to popular belief, Zuri and Eldon were not romantic interests for each other. I would probably have played it up at the end of the comic, but then be like, no, they still hate each other's guts. I don't know where she would go after this, after the Ivory Veil, but you know, ultimately things would have led up to a confrontation with Ardaris, and Aldrin and probably Eldon would have killed him, or found a way to maybe imprison him on the plane and, you know, bring their dad back. Again, it's unfortunate that I don't have more concrete notes, but I had enough plot stuff planned that I figured I could kind of just make it up as I went. And it just, now that I'm here,
why
it's
worry
like,
about book 6 when you're still working on book 2?
yeah. So now I'm here and I'm like, what else do I have to talk about? But yeah, the overall thing would be them going around gathering support from a bunch of old friends and new friends and coming together to defeat the Ivory Veil and Ardaris and punish him. Their mom dies. Their dad lives, technically. I do remember for the very end, well, Lana and Laris would have gotten together. And I think Aldrin and Karis, they would have stayed together. They ultimately would have gone, I think it kind of like Lord of the Rings, like going to the Undying Lands sort of thing. They would basically agree that, okay, we're going to go on another plane of existence where, like, my mom's soul lives where my dad lives now. We would have gone. So they pretty much go to hang out with those guys. They managed to live. Well, she doesn't live, but her soul lives on another plane. I have to get rid of that line. There we go. So they would have gone there. Eldon probably would have, like, wandered the earth, trying to find some new meaning. Like I said, there probably would have been a moment where it's like, are they going to get together and do something? But then she would tell him to, like, get bent, and he would tell her to screw off, and they just walk their opposite directions. Turek, I don't know what would have happened to Turek. Valdera and Hilmore probably would have teamed up again and gone off to do things. Maybe Cal and Turek may have gone on some
real power couple.
Right. I would have seen that last scene with Zuri and Eldon with Call basically looking at them like, kiss, we know you want to. And they both look at him, look at each other like, ew, God, no.
Yeah.
That strikes me as the kind of thing he would do.
Cal is unfortunately the joke character. I never really came up with anything serious for him to do. I'm sure that would have changed, but nothing ever formulated clearly in my head. To your point, Mr. Plasma Ball, no, Lana would not have drunk the healing water. She chooses to remain as a vampire, and what that means is there would have been a scene or like a montage toward the end of the camera where she basically, kind of like the scene in Lord of the Rings, where like Arwen basically has to watch Aragorn die and continue to live on forever. Lana's immortal now, so Laris is gonna die. Laris ends up dying of old age, and she continues on. Lana basically has to watch Karis and Aldrin go and leave the plane. They leave. Lana basically has to watch all of her friends just kind of leave, and she would remain behind. But, you know, she's a matriarch of these vampires now, so she's got a group of people who look up to her as a leader, so she kind of takes that role on. I also, as much as I hate how much of a ripoff it is, there was a part of me that really wanted to do a scene at the very, very end where I jump forward like Battlestar Galactica style, like 10,000 years in the future, and Lana shows up in like a modern day setting and talks to people or something like that shows that, okay, she's still around. Everything else in the world has changed, but she's still here. I like that idea.
I like that too. That can be fun to play.
Because again, Lana was meant to be the main character, but Aldrin kind of usurped that from her in a way that I'm not that comfortable with in retrospect, because I always liked Lana. I wanted to give her more stuff, more importance. So I like the idea of bookending it with, her experience and her being on her own, left, moved on to a new life kind of thing. I like that. Quentis could definitely still be around too. And again, I never came up with a way to actually kill him. So maybe he's still around somewhere. Who knows? Some of these ancient legends still exist. The world's always going to have problems. I was just thinking about something else that I wanted to talk about, but now I don't remember what it is. I should say, I don't like copying things too blatantly, but I rip stuff off all the time. There's a ton of stuff in my comic that I blatantly ripped off. Zuri's whole design is ripped off from a character from Bleach. Like, almost wholesale. The color of her hair is different, and that's about it. So I agree that, quote unquote rip off isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is the way that art propagates, essentially.
It's an homage.
Yeah. So that was what I had planned. Zuri was based on... Oh god, what was her name?
I'm trying to think too.
At the time, it was still before the anime had got to that point, before there was an official dub, so everybody thought her name was Saruki Thunderwitch. But her actual canon name is Saruki, I think, Sanderwiki. So there you go. Some of the names in Bleach got weird when we got the official translations.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of them started weird too.
So, a lot of them did.
To be fair.
That is the character that she is based off of, because I love that design. But yeah, I'm racking my brain to think of any other major details that I could think of, but I think that was about it. So I will... Most of everyone's backstories has been kind of gone through already. I did write a backstory for Cal. Basically, his backstory was kind of going to be all like one big setup to explain why he looks the way he does. And that it was essentially when he was in a magical college, learning to become an illusionist, his teacher convinces him to comes up with some plan. Like, his teacher owes some people a bunch of money and convinces Cal to come, or makes this plan to convince Cal to dress up as him so that he can get away, and Cal becomes the victim of these guys that come and get him. And that's actually how Cal ends up dying. But the reason that Cal looks the way he does is because he was dressed up as that teacher.
Oh,
and
fate is so cruel.
I remember I was gonna make a joke in that he dons a weird looking disguise in the North Haven arc. That was actually gonna be what he looked like originally. And the whole thing was that we were gonna have a flashback to Cal's history, and there would be this guy who looks just like him teaching this class and acting smart, and it would be like, oh, this is weird. And then we find out, oh, that's actually somebody different.
Aww.
Again, I wasn't 100% sold on the idea, but I liked the idea of, that kind of weird backstory. I already touched on Zuri's whole deal. She doesn't really have a backstory. Again, she existed for a very specific purpose, but she had a very in-depth class, mechanics, so to speak. Rowlet, kind of talked about him. Quentis, like I mentioned, he is probably he's next to like Ardaris, he's probably one of the oldest people in the comic. Just by virtue of swapping minds, he's pretty much found a way to be immortal. That's actually the reason why he wears the mask that he does, is because his face doesn't matter. His face can basically be anybody, but as long as he wears that mask, he is Quentis. The golden mask that he wears is more of his face than anything else. There may have been a scene in which he like breaks down because, you know, if he doesn't have his mask or something like that. What happened to Finks's employee? I hope he's living a happy life.
What was his name? Dave or something?
I think so. I don't
There was
know.
a joke where he was called Dave, but I don't think that was actually his name. It was
No,
HAL
yeah.
9000.
Yeah, because that was the joke. It was that the airship called him Dave because it was, yeah.
Oh, right.
Because the airship was also sentient.
Right. I liked whatever
insane.
real Dave's real name was. I was trying to like think of how to get him into Anti-World before I gave up on
He was
that.
another fun character. I'm sure that he could have showed up at some other point, but I feel like he kind of deserved a happy ending after the crap he
was
went
so
through.
loyal to Finks.
Was he?
Well,
I'm pretty sure he just left at the end. At the end of the North Haven arc, I think he just left.
loyal but underpaid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think he probably would have shown up again because I think he got... I can't remember if he got back on the airship at North Haven, and then at some point they would have sold the airship to Turek and the heroes in Lavicport. So he very well might have shown up again, probably in, you know, as a background for a one-off character, but not much else. I didn't touch on Ardaris' backstory. So Ardaris' whole backstory is that he is basically from a species of demigods that are immortal, and they lived in complete isolation several thousand years ago, many years ago. At some point he stepped out. Oh, no problem, Spider. Thank you for joining me. At some point he stepped out and he came in contact with mortals. All the members of his species had never seen mortals before, and when he found them, they worshipped him. And he realized, I like this. I like the idea of them worshiping me because they've never seen anything like me before. To them, I am one of a kind. So this would eventually culminate with Ardaris going back to his village, or to, you know, his single village of where his species lives, and wiping all of them out except for him. He wants to be the one and only so that he can attain godhood as, you know, a unique being. And that's the same reason why he considers Aldrin such a threat, because Aldrin and Eldon are also two of a kind in this case. There's nothing else, there's no one else that exists like them, and that they are a threat to him in the same respect that if people start worshipping them, they could potentially become godlike. They don't like that. Or Ardaris doesn't like that. So that's his whole motivation of he wants to get as many people as he can to worship him and go forward with that and become as powerful as possible. Whether or not that actually happens, who knows? I'll see you later, Thile. Thank you again for joining. And also thank you for following, Seth. I think there's some other people that may have followed in this point, Luton time as well. I've got the notification sounds turned off for the stream, but thank you again for everybody. So yeah, that was Ardaris. His backstory is that he is super evil and he sucks. Everybody else's backstory has basically been gone through, as well as where they probably would have ended up. So, let me see. Oh, you know what? I have completely forgotten about all of the ad breaks. How did Finks die? Finks dies by he gets sent back to Tidaris, where his phylactery is. How did he lose his phylactery? He goes back to where his phylactery is in Tidaris. Ardaris confronts him and basically says, your usefulness has run out. Quentis destroys him. And the phylactery is destroyed. And that is how Quentis dies. Unfortunately. Alright, so I am going to run... I'll run like 3 minutes of ads. That should keep the pre and the mid-roll off for a while. Apologies to anybody who ran into the ads. I can't do anything about it, unfortunately. But I'll run a few minutes of ads. I'm gonna go grab a drink of water.
I haven't seen any pop up yet, so I think they're good.
Okay. Well, to ensure that they don't, I'll run some ads. I'll go grab a drink of water and then come back here. We can chat for a bit, and then I'll probably launch into the questions that we've got on the sheet here, as well as anything else that might be left hanging. And yeah, I will see you in a few minutes. Yeah, I'm going to mute. I'm going to grab myself a drink of water, and I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. Me too.
All right, I'm back. All right, well, it's not letting me send any more ads, so I guess a minute it is. I guess I'll take this moment to shout out our background music. It's nothing special, but it's an artist by the name of Harris Heller on Spotify. Streaming with music in the background is incredibly difficult in this world with DMCA and copyright strikes across the board. Harris Heller, all of his music on Spotify is specifically made for like stream background music, and he's straight up said all of his music is DMCA free, copyright free. So I appreciate it. It's really nice. It's pretty decent, just lo-fi background music stuff. So I like it. It is weird being back in this world. So many thoughts have remained lodged in my head for a decade that I never ended up getting on paper. And there was definitely some of them that are lost to time, definitely some that I didn't write down and are just gone, unfortunately. But in all honesty, I can't remember much else as far as what my plans were. I've pretty much run through everything that I can recall. Anything that I can remember. Covered all the major beats. Took a bit longer than I expected, but here we are.
Was there ever a, if I might, was there ever a plan to show some of the other members of the council?
Yes. Eventually we would have seen everybody. Eventually we would have seen everybody on the Black Council. I mean, we already knew basically half of it. I think even... I never mentioned it outright. Or maybe I did. I think I said Finks's grandfather served on the Black Council in an early comic, and I think somebody in the comments pieced together that the person whose title was the Joker was probably Finks's grandfather. And yes, you are absolutely right. That is who that was. But eventually, yeah, we would have seen everybody. I came up with a whole list of titles. I probably would have removed some because I think I had like 12 or 15 of them or something like that, which is a lot. But those that we hadn't seen, we definitely would have gotten a look at them. Yeah. I'm going to... Okay, so we don't have a lot of questions backed up in our submission sheet here, but I guess Georger1071 or 0171, excuse me, asks, why are you stopping the comic? Well, oh, thank you, Plasma Ball. It is greatly appreciated. I'm honestly surprised to see this many people here. This has been pretty cool. But so why did I stop making the comic for myself? It's a lot. There's a lot of reasons. I've dreaded answering this question because it's in no small part a combination of just... I always hated the fact that I felt like I was riding on the coattails of someone else's success. Like, obviously it was all based in the same style as Order the Stick, and I am not a good artist. I can emulate this style very well, clearly, but I never felt like it was entirely my own, and that kind of grated on my mind a little bit. And so it was always kind of in the back of my mind, like, maybe I should just give it up. So that was part of it. The other part of it was I just didn't have the time to devote to it. I was working full time. Back then I was, working a job where it was like 10, 11, 12 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6, 7 days a week. So it was ridiculous. And then I ended up moving to Vancouver for a few years and went to school, and there's a lot going on back then. And unfortunately, I just didn't have the time to devote to it. And to be a little more personal, I've struggled with depression for probably most of my life. I haven't really been aware of it until the last 2-3 years, but that definitely played a part in the comics' lack of development. Very often it would get to the point where I would just feel overwhelmed, and rather than try and deal with things, I retreat away from them. And unfortunately, the comic is one of those things that I just kind of retreated from. And it was honestly back then kind of exhausting because, like I said, it was every waking moment of my life was this comic. I was constantly thinking. Every single like new story idea that I came up with, I would find a way to like tie it into the comic somehow, and it was exhausting. So it's a lot of different things that contributed to its demise, but it is what it is. I don't know. I can't speak for Diluth, the other Chris, but Alex, do you have anything you want to add as to why the comic stopped?
A lot of the same. Just that there was, some downtime in terms of getting back to the main plot, and some B plot that stretched longer than expected. And there was a point in time in which I'd gotten way ahead because Dallas had a new job as well that was taking a bunch of his time, and was, finally a drawing job. So he was drawing all day.
Oh, nice.
And I had a backlog of scripts, and then I hit a point with a new job that was a nighttime job. So I was working until 2 a.m. sometimes, coming home, sleeping a bit, and then being back up again with the family and the kids. And at the point in time that I got a change of schedule and could start writing scripts again, he'd already gone through the backlog of scripts at that point, and I was able to write scripts again, but he was not in a drawing position, and it just kind of went back and forth. And it was fun, it was fulfilling, and there is nothing like seeing something I wrote turned into graphics and put onto a page. But it just, there never was enough time to work on it.
Yeah. It probably didn't help that you guys weren't receiving the information you needed from me.
And the timing of that is what was horrible too, because at the point that you were able to get that to us, and we were both excited, we went over it and talked through a bunch of things and wrote out some slightly more detailed plans for it. And then right then is when real life kicked both of us, and we both suddenly lost the time. Like it.
Yeah.
We had a good B plot going. I thought I liked some of the side stuff just to keep it moving and keep people engaged. And then we just both, the same thing. Real life just came and said, "Nah, not today."
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, and it's especially sad because when I started this comic, and especially when it moved to its own website and I kind of started taking it a bit more seriously, I made a vow to myself, because I've read a lot of comics when I was younger, and so many of those comics just petered out and died off, and I was like, I hate the fact that I can't know what happened. And I made a vow to myself when I started my comic that I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let this just die or fall into obscurity. And when that started happening, it made me feel that much more worse about it. That, oh, well, I've disappointed the fans, I've disappointed myself. And that feeling of guilt just kind of compounded itself and eventually led to just giving up, walking away, unfortunately. I hate the fact that I, abandoned things.
There was even a point where I had spent some time doing just some basic graphics to build like a scroll background with a color, and I was going to do just some text only dialogue and story just to kind of keep it moving and get to that end point. And I'm with you on that. There were times where I would pull that up and I would just stare at a screen for half an hour, feeling guilty, be like, okay, I'll do this page, but will I do it again next week? What's the point? There was points where it was just a horrible cycle of kicking myself and not doing what I needed to do because I was too busy kicking myself.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's tough. It is tough. I'm glad streaming keeps me on a bit of a regular schedule while also being not that creatively intensive, so it's a nice trade-off that way. But did you have any idea for why the Ivory Vale commanders worked with Ardaris? They all had their reasons. Like I said, Eldon was to try and protect his mother. He made a deal. He knew that Ardaris was a bad guy, but he thought he had things under his control, and he very much did not. Eldon was a bit naive, and his whole deal, I guess his character arc was kind of coming to grips with the fact that he wasn't in control and that he needs to find a new place in the world. Rowlet just kind of comes from a family of fighters, and Ardaris gave him a chance to, hang out in this cool palace and not really have to worry about anything. And Rowlet is very much a apathetic kind of character, and so he wouldn't really have too many qualms about working with Ardaris. He wouldn't really care about, the evil stuff. He's just kind of doing it for the paycheck, more or less. Zuri is the kind of character who causes problems on purpose, so Ardaris gives her a good chance to just be herself. And Quentis is an opportunist. Quentis works with whoever is in control, whoever he thinks is on the winning side. And so he teamed up with Ardaris because they know each other from hundreds of years ago, so why not? He's the one who's currently winning, so he's gonna tie his boat to the bigger one and tag along. Quentis is more concerned with surviving than he is about necessarily winning, I guess, is a good way to put it. Are Aldrin and Eldon immortal? I think I decided on yes. If not immortal, they would have very extended lifespans. I don't know how long tieflings live, but tieflings also have a very long lifespan, so it would probably be something similar, so that Aldrin and Karis would be together for a while. What's another question that we have here? From Wordsy, good friend of mine. Hiatus and time off has to happen from time to time after long ones. What brought people back? I don't know. There was a sense of shame that I had associated with this comic when I moved on to other communities, because I didn't want people to think I made this weird ripoff of Order of the Stick. But over time, that sense of shame just kind of faded away. And when I went back to look at it again, I was like, oh, hey, this is cool. I had fun making this comic. I want people to know about it. But by then it was, 10 years too late. Mm-hmm. So I went back and I started reading some of the comments that people had left on the later comics, and realizing there are still people coming here. There are still people checking this out, looking for updates, wanting to know what happened. And I thought to myself, well, how can I give back? How can I give back to these people that have been loyal, who are interested? And I've been streaming for about 2 years at this point. And I thought, well, this is a pretty good platform. I like the idea of interacting in real time, kind of getting people's reactions and stuff like that. So that's how I got brought back. And then I think as for the two of you, I think I just wrangled you in.
I occasionally check on the website to make sure something hasn't broken on it. So
I'll give you credit that the website still holds up 100%.
Right, it hasn't been torn down by spam bots or hackers, which is probably part of, or at least partially due to the fact that it's that shitty system I designed that is not WordPress or anything. So it's probably immune to the.
I guess I don't know how many people know that, but the whole website that we built, Chris basically built that by hand from scratch. The comment system, the author's comments, posting comics, all of that whole framework was basically built by Chris from scratch.
I mean, it's rock solid. I've worked with WordPress. I've worked with a bunch of others. You know, it's a simple interface on the back end, but it's a rock solid interface. It does what it's supposed to.
It does what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, I didn't realize that you'd built that from scratch. I was assuming it was a canned piece of software from somewhere. I mean, this is a piece of code you should always be proud of.
Thank you. It's old, but I mean, there was I don't know how much we want to go into this, but like Jordan and I always have done like role playing to various degrees, and there was a time when, you know, we had a bunch of like Star Wars role playing games we participated in, which had their own sites, and so the background for like the framework that eventually the Anti-Hero site used kind of like, you know, was like incubated in these like inferior products, and then I think Anti-Heroes is like the apex of what that software became. It's certainly the one that's gotten the most longevity in use. But man, when I look at that search system or that like index page, I just want to scream at myself.
Yeah. So, behind the scenes, when we upload comics, we basically can attach tags to them, like search keywords, but there's no like organization system to it, really. So it's just like, and we can enter anything we want. And so especially when I uploaded like the announcement for this live stream, I had to look through it and be like, how the hell does this work again?
Right.
Like, and I'm going through and trying to look for like keywords that I can put in there, and I'm just like, oh my god. And there is a box that lists all the keywords in like in order of usage, so the ones that get used most are listed at the top, but it lists everything and there's no search for it. So it's just, if there was something that was used, you can look for it, or you can just take a guess and maybe it'll work. Like, again, I don't know how that side of stuff works, and it's amazing the amount of work that you put into that, but it's showing its age.
There was more than once that I re-uploaded a comic after realizing I'd made a typo in one of the tags.
Yeah, I honestly can't even tell you what happens to like a tag if you like edit it and change it. I don't even remember. Like, does it just like drift in like the endless void forever unseen, or does it actually get deleted? God, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Good question.
Yeah, there are definitely some elements of the interface that are very much a product of like 2000s web design, you know, like, I don't know, when you're a kid, it's like kind of cool to like make things sleek and like hide the search feature where no one's gonna click it, because it's like right next to the donation button, I think, and you know, Cafe Press stuff. But yeah, I was happy to, you know, try to contribute with that and learn some stuff. Yeah, and there's no plans of it. I'm not gonna ever take it down as long as I'm alive and like able to pay bills. So yeah, I've said it several times, but just for people listening,
it is. Yeah, it is cool that it's still up, basically in its original format after 13 years. Maybe we'll outlive the Space Jam website. It's been up since 1995, I think.
Damn. I checked on the Wayback Machine, like the Internet Archive thing, to see what the original title for the Captain Crunch one was, and it's always been testing.
No, it can't be, because I remember that title.
I looked back at like December 2014 or whenever that was uploaded, and it still said it. So I don't know. It must have changed really quick.
Weird.
So if Lana had indeed been the main character, what would the main plot story likely have been? That's an interesting question. The comic changed formats so drastically once the story expanded that I don't even know. Like, it could have been completely different. I mean, she still was a main character. I feel like of the four, she was probably up there. Like Aldrin and her were definitely the main characters. I feel like Karis and Cal were definitely secondary in the hierarchy, so to speak. But like I said toward the beginning of the stream, the original incarnation was that Aldrin was just the dungeon master in the story. He was literally the voice of this unseen voice of the dungeon master, and that's why we never see his face or know what his name was very early in the comic. And if that story had continued, I have no idea where that would have gone either, because eventually that joke would have just petered out. There's only so much mileage I can get out of a joke like that. And I mostly just wanted to have a comic in which there were evil characters as, you know, the main characters, the forces of good. So there was, you know, a necromancer. Well, he's not really a necromancer, but supposedly a necromancer looking person, a tiefling, a vampire, and a ghost, all canonically evil in D&D. But in this case, again, one of the themes of the comic is that, hey, alignment doesn't matter. That's always something that I've played with a lot in the tabletop games that I run, especially, is that just the alignments don't matter. Just because a book tells you that your race is canonically evil doesn't matter. You are you. Judged by actions, not by rules. So, a bit of a long question here from Artemis X. First of all, thank you for making this comic. Thank you for reading. It has been a great source of joy ever since I found it sometime in 2012. Would you all be comfortable with something potentially utilizing the ideas laid out in the comic and in the Q&A and writing up a complete version of the story on archive of our own, presuming that appropriately massive credit was given to you all? I mean, I'm okay with that. Like I said, I will probably edit this video down to be more concise, but I don't have plans to actually like write things out. And quite frankly, I would love to see what other people's takes are on the story.
Oh dear God! You mentioned fan art, but fan fiction?
I guess that is technically fan fiction, yeah.
I'm frightened if there's already some out there.
But it would be authorized fan fiction.
True. It had the stamp of approval.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would be okay with it. I don't know if you would have any issues with it, Alex.
I mean, I was doing script off of your plot line. It's yours. I would have no issues with it.
Fair enough. I mean, some of your stuff would
that's
presumably come up.
True, but I mean, on a similar token, I don't know when we'd be able to get around to it, but I wouldn't be against turning some of it into a book form.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how well it would translate.
I think I've at this point I've moved on from this story, that I enjoy revisiting it in this sense, kind of like reminiscing almost, but I don't know if I would be willing to come back to it in a large form. I've thought about doing like side stuff in the past, but again, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have the time to do that now, and I've got other stuff coming up, more creative stuff potentially, so who knows? Never say never, but there's no plans for it at this point. Loot in Time, you rewrote a scene from the comic back in the day as fan fiction. Hey, I got my start writing by writing Pokemon fan fiction. I wish I still had that writing somewhere, but it's lost to time. But I explicitly remember writing Pokemon fan fiction when I was a kid.
Voltron for me.
Star Wars for me. And hey, I mean, you never know. Like I found things I had written in 2001 on a floppy disk like a month ago that
Yeah.
I thought were entirely gone. Yeah, Ketra is saying, yeah. So you could, who knows? Maybe you can find it.
I,
I mean, I would love to
I
read
think-
Luton Times fanfic if they still
Yeah.
have it. Actually, that would
I-
be really cool.
I know my Pokemon fanfiction, I think, was on an old computer that doesn't exist anymore. So
Say one thing I said to a lot of people, Luton Time, you wrote something, you're a writer. It doesn't matter if it wasn't good, you wrote something.
it's true.
You can call yourself a writer, man.
The golden words that I heard, I don't remember where I heard it from, but the golden words to keep in mind is for writing and any artistic endeavor really is that the first draft of everything is crap.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. It's the first draft is basically you getting all of the garbage out of your head and onto the page. When you go back to it, that's when you can start refining it into something coherent. And I hate rewriting.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I am so like paralyzed in fear of writing things is because I hate having to go back and rewrite it, but it's truth. It's the way it is.
It's like this creative act, right? Where it's like for me at least, writing anything now especially is like such an act that requires so much labor. I guess I'm like diving headfirst into like the birth metaphor, but like to like have to go through so much like consternation to like get anything onto the page, and to like go back and contort it and like break the bones of your child.
Kill your darlings. That's the
Exactly,
classic, right?
exactly. So I just don't write, which is fun in the dissertation phase of my career. But
Fair enough.
I say a metaphor I've heard a lot recently that I really like is reading your first draft and saying this sucks is like a baker taking a taste of flour and saying my cake sucks.
That's a good way to put
that's
it.
a good metaphor.
I like that. Going back a bit, but Mr. Plasma Ball asks, why was the ghost Frank trashed at the end of the first arc? I had nowhere else to go with him. He's here. He's on the live stream. He's up there.
He's in Anti-World also.
Oh, he was in Anti-World. That's right. I kind of
back.
pawned him off on you, didn't I?
Yeah.
No,
I kind of made him into like a worse Cal though, unfortunately.
I didn't know what
that's
else to
interesting.
do with him, and he stuck around longer than I expected him to. I never intended him to be, a major character. He was always just kind of there as for a bit, and I think people took to him a lot, which is weird, but that's that's kind of how it works. But
I
So
think
that
it paired
actu-
so well with Cal because it's kind of like, oh hey, like Cal finally gets to like hang out with like the frat boy, and that like brings out the most like I don't know, the core of Cal.
I'm trying to remember, was Frank from the same place that Cal was? Like they were already ghosts together, right?
they
Or did Frank show up later?
They were ghosts in the same dungeon, right?
were ghosts in the
Right.
same dungeon, but they also knew each other from like their college days. So I think they might have known each
So-
other.
So does that mean Frank knew Cal died because he dressed up as the professor? Or did Frank maybe think he was the professor and that dying did something?
Mm.
That I don't know. That may have been something interesting to look up, but I never actually wrote that. I think I did have a note about when Cal was in college. It wasn't the same college as Frank. They didn't know each other when they were living, but because I don't know how long they've been dead. But that could be fun. That'd be a good way to bring him back, basically, is exploring Cal's backstory. Make him a little more important. But yeah, I had nowhere else to go with that ghost. And in retrospect, if I could go back and rewrite some of those jokes, because boy howdy, there's some stuff at the beginning of this comic that hasn't aged well. I am not proud of some of those jokes. So I would change some of those. And Frank and Cal's like frat boy aesthetic it hasn't aged well, let's say. And I wouldn't really want to go back to that now.
Mhm.
I mean, it was never glorified. It was very obvious. Hey, these ghosts are acting in a way that's not appropriate.
They were
So
always the idiots, yeah, and
Mhm.
yes,
it's yeah, yeah, that's fair. Let's see.
I think I
From
took the Frank so much because he has like the Mandalorian helmet.
he does have the Mandalorian helmet. Watch the Mandalorian. Stream sponsored by Disney.
Right.
No, it isn't. God no. Whispery asks, it could well be argued that Andil basically murdered Lana at the start of the comic by throwing her into that trap. Would he ever have acknowledged this and, I don't know, apologized or repented or the like? Probably. He probably would have apologized, and I don't know how sorry he would really be for it, because Andil's always been a dick. But I'm sure it would have come up once they eventually kind of reunited later in the story, and there would be some awkwardness about it, but I think he would eventually kind of learn to grow up a bit before dying.
I have a question related to both of them, I guess. Did you ever like have any ideas or like plan on doing any kind of like more in-depth flashbacks to like how like the heroes got together, like back when Lana was like still like pre-vampire, or like how they might have like how could someone as pure as Lana have gotten caught up with someone as like narcissistic and dickish as Andal?
I didn't have plans for it, but I definitely could have seen it happening. I mean, the thing is, Lana was always naive. Like, Lana's character arc was learning to trust and believe in herself more than following other people, which is, you know, how she eventually comes into becoming leader of a group of vampires. She has to take on a role of leadership now. It's been passed down to her, and she's the only one who can take it out of this group of people. So that her character arc was always learning to be less naive about the world, and so the reason that she teams up with these people is she just, you know, they're a group of adventurers who show up and they say, hey, you want to come with us? We need a rogue. We're going to go to this dungeon and get a bunch of loot. He says, yeah, great. I'm a rogue. I know how to do rogue stuff. So that's kind of how that would have happened. As far as like what their individual backstories are, I never wrote anything concrete down. They were, unfortunately, the heroes were a little more underdeveloped than everybody else, just due to the fact that they were less important. On
I think
purpose.
there's a message in that too. Yeah, that's like, yeah, why give them more attention when like they actually are the ones who are doing the least intriguing work, right?
And I've mentioned before. Like I've mentioned before, I like the idea of, you know, the supposed heroes of the story being just completely ineffectual.
I mean, they start off as a party of 5. They lose Lana, and then they lose Xavier moments later. So,
Oh my
they,
God.
they started off.
I forgot about Xavier.
Yeah, the archer who's on panel for like 2 pages and gets blown away with a destruction spell.
Yeah. Oh man, I forgot about him. I completely forgot about Xavier. Wow. Weird. Which is funny because I was looking through so many of my files of like the drawings of these peoples, and so many of like the original drawings of them were, I didn't bother renaming like the layers in Adobe Illustrator, so a lot of them for several characters are just called Archer Guy because they're based off of like the body of Xavier originally from so many years ago. I can't remember who it was. I think it was in Rowlett's original artwork, and the layer of his art is literally just called Archer Guy, which I always thought was funny.
See, so even if the characters aren't going to be revisited again, they go on to live full lives as, other people's body parts.
That's true. I think eventually Laris became my go-to template. Like if I was drawing a new character, I would usually pull him up and then kind of delete all of the details and build out from there. A lot of archers died early on, as I recall. Was there any particular reason for that? No. There's an archer that got sent to the demiplane, so he met Aldrin's dad. How do you think that went? Was that? I don't remember that.
I don't either, but it would have been really cool to have like the gear in the background with some bones and suggest that he ate him when they showed up.
I figured he would just be there. He would just be hanging out. He doesn't know how to get back because he's not a spellcaster, so he's like, well,
Right.
I live here now. Cyril's not a bad guy, so he would have just taken him in and been like, yeah, all right, come have dinner with me. But yeah, no, there's no particular reason that I was picking on archers. I think it's a lot easier to draw characters in melee combat than having to do ranged stuff, so I think they just kind of get the raw end of the stick. In a comic like this, once you close that melee distance. Mm-hmm. Comic 22, let's see. It had to happen sooner or later. Oh yeah, there he is.
Oh,
I forgot about him.
So he's fine, honestly.
He's fine.
He could be king of the plane.
I wrote that joke without the intention of it being the literal plane that he's being sent to. I always was under the assumption that Aldrin just sent him to some random plane wherever. But it would be funny to have him show up like 400 comics later. Just
especially because then the joke would have been, wait, are you telling me the entire ritual wasn't necessary? I could have just plane shifted here the whole damn time.
No one ever asked.
Yeah, it's true. That's also the appearance of Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah, that's a memorable panel.
I still have all this old art. This was also before I started rounding the ends of my lines. You can still see their like hard lines before I learned how to do that, before I knew how to use Adobe Illustrator properly. And now they've changed it so much that I still don't know how to use it properly.
And there's Frank.
Yeah, that was Frank.
People.
There he was. I don't remember what happened to Frank. I think he just stayed behind.
Yeah, I don't know when they left him behind.
He was right around. There he is.
I think Cal says goodbye to him, right?
Maybe. Yeah, there he is. What? Oh, right. He got taken away by the ghost lawyer. Oh, I am still proud of my time stop.
That was cool.
Oh yeah.
I like the inverted colors. This is back when I was assembling all the parts in each panel separately. So I would draw each character in Illustrator, and then I would import everything into Photoshop and assemble everything manually before I moved to just drawing each panel in Illustrator and then cropping it out into Photoshop. I still assembled all the comic in Photoshop, and I could have done it all in Illustrator, but the thing is, there's a thing that happens when you save a .ai file in Illustrator and open it in Adobe Photoshop. The colors, specifically the black, isn't quite black. It's not quite the same. And that's the reason why in my comic, all of the black lines aren't quite black. Like if you compare them to the actual black of the borders, they're a little bit lighter than that black color. And I always kind of liked that aesthetic, and I stuck with it for.
Yeah, I was gonna say I always thought that was on purpose to.
Yeah, me too.
There was no true black except for the black of the nothingness around them.
It was done on purpose. It just wasn't done in Adobe Illustrator. Like it was just an artifact of importing one file into a different program and the way that they interacted. Where did they leave? I just want to see the ghost lawyer again. I remember now that it's mentioned, the ghost lawyer, I know exactly what they're talking about, because there's a folder in my folder for all this stuff that is just ghost lawyer, and that's where his art was stored.
With an NDA, I assume.
Yeah.
There should be a tag for lawyer, maybe.
There we are.
Ah.
Yeah, there he is. Oh yeah, Frank did stay around for a long time, didn't he? 52 comics in. Jeez. I thought he was way more of a bit character than that, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote this scene just so that I could get rid of him, because I didn't know why he was still there.
It's tough to juggle two ghosts.
Poor Frank. And it's just because he was like, he's a very similar character to Cal, and it's kind of hard to juggle two similar characters like that.
Juggling ghosts, they always just, fall through your hands, slip through your fingers.
Whispery also asks, so Lana and the vial of devampirism water, was its curing ability an all or nothing delay, or was it a dampirism a possibility? Or dampiers or dampiers even potentially a thing in anti-heroes? So the water, I think, was generally an instant effect. Like it would heal over a span of, I don't know, 30 seconds, something like that. The way that I wrote vampirism was borrowed very heavily from the Elder Scrolls series, in which it's basically treated like a disease in a way, so that when you contract it, which is weird because you have to be dead for it, whereas you don't in Elder Scrolls. So it's weird, but the way I always saw it is that once you have it, or you have been cured of vampirism, you can't get it again. Like you're basically, once you've drank that water, you're pretty much immune to that effect anymore. And so having like a demi-vampire or a dampier probably wouldn't... I guess it could happen, because potentially Lana and Laris could have had kids. But I mean, that's a completely different context as well. So the healing water would not have produced a half vampire, but having a vampire and a mortal mate may have. I never intended for them to have kids. Maybe it wasn't possible. I don't know. But one way or the other, I didn't rule anything out. So it is very much possible that dampiers or dampires, I don't know how it's pronounced, could be a thing. And that is actually all of the questions we had on the submission sheet. We didn't get a whole lot of questions submitted early. I am happy to see this many people showed up for the stream, though. This is honestly more than I expected. there weren't a lot of comments on the comic, and I posted on Giant in the Playground as well, and didn't get very many replies there either. And I was a little worried that, you know, a 13-year-old webcomic probably may have died more than I expected. But I am happy to see that people turned out for what.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions from the audience or from us?
Sean, kind of a mutual friend who I just doxed. Spudsbud, who and I doxed twice, asked, did you ever have anyone in mind for like who you would cast in the live action movie of Antiheroes to play the characters?
Ooh, I remember there was a point when I was making this comic that I went and I saw Hellboy 2. And the girl that plays, I don't remember what character it is, but the girl in Hellboy 2 looks exactly like Lana. She's got like the red eyes, pale skin, light blonde hair, everything. Like it's a dead ringer.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta look it up now. Let's see. Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Yeah. There she is. I guess she didn't have red eyes, but...
Yeah, she's kind of perfect.
So I remember making a post about that as on a comic, saying, like, hey, I just watched this movie. This lady looks exactly like my character. She would probably be the person to play her. Obviously, that would be different now, but as for everybody else, I don't even know where to start. Like, there was no point in which I actually pegged any individual character with like an actor in real life. Even Aldrin, as far as his voice is concerned, I have no idea. I have a voice in my mind of what he sounded like, but I can't equate it to anybody in particular.
Do you like hear him as like wry, sarcastic, or as like brooding, or like what did you have in mind when you?
Yeah, definitely like dry and sarcastic. Even after the robe comes off and we see his face, he would still be the same. His dialogue would be unchanged. Like he would be the same character, 100%. Sound exactly the same. I would hope so, anyway. But yeah, very, very dry, very sarcastic.
I'll be honest, in my head, he always sounds like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
Interesting. Interesting take.
Huh.
All right, fair enough. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's it's valid.
We'll do it for the podcast narrative.
Yeah. What would have happened to the healing water given that Lana wouldn't drink it? I don't know. Zuri did steal it. Because I'm pretty sure the last time we saw it, I think Zuri had it. She stole it from Lana when she was dueling her in the White Palace. So I don't know where that was going.
I think Lana got that back from her before running off.
Did she? Maybe she... Oh, yeah, I think she did. You're right.
Yeah.
Because Zuri took it.
And
then...
And played with it in front of her, and
Right.
then we kind of got the suggestion that she let her have it back and they let them escape.
Right. Yeah. That is
And-
correct. I very vividly remember Zuri having it, and I think she like showed it to Eldon or something.
And then she showed Eldon the letter, and Eldon let her read it, knowing what Aldrin would have done at the end of it.
Right.
The classic callback to Order of the Stick. Guess what I prepared this morning?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know where that plot thread would have led. It definitely would have come up again, because, like I said, having Lana make the choice to remain a vampire would be a big moment for her. And she probably, like, she wouldn't have destroyed it or like smashed it on the ground or something. She may have just like given it back to Laris and been like, there's probably someone else who needs this, or maybe they might have used it to like cure the spring that it came from, restore it. I don't know if I like the idea of, you know, going back to the way things were, but it probably would have ended up like that. It definitely would have come back at some point, but I didn't have any concrete plans.
Tricked the Vampire Lord into drinking it.
Yeah, maybe. He could have survived then. He expected to die from the sunrise, but then he doesn't. Just goes
Mix
off.
it with a little gin, maybe. Might be nice.
Goes off and lives his life. All right. And any other questions? Concerns?
Well, I think this was a great idea.
It was fun.
Definitely, it definitely feels good to be back here and talking about it.
It's weird because when I was making it, I didn't talk about the comic to basically anyone. Like I never discussed like plot details or anything like that. Like I think briefly I talked to you a bit about it, Chris, but for the most part we didn't really discuss anything.
You like to
was
keep
just kind of
secrets,
a
and
thing.
I like to be kept in the dark about your plots.
And so
it's a good arrangement.
It was weird for me to think back and be like, well, yeah, I never really talked to anybody about this comic over its lifetime, which is so weird to me to think about, but that's the way it was. So it's refreshing to kind of open up and talk openly about it and share it with a bunch of people. The bugbear made her fate. She would have lived. She would have gone on to become a successful adventurer, I'm sure, along with the top hat guy died, didn't he?
Oh, he died?
Didn't he get stabbed?
He was in like the amusement park, right? In the valley?
Yeah, he was at the entrance. I'm pretty sure he died.
Yeah, that's why she was with Turek when they left the
Yeah.
valley.
No.
Oh.
Serial killer. Oh man. I was proud of this comic. I loved this comic so much. Just the Cal just being rebooting overnight and Lana spilling her cereal. I was proud of that one.
Do you have a favorite comic? Oh God, it's so bright.
I don't know if it's kind of hard to read, but the cereal that she's eating is Bloody O's. Let's see. Yes, that bugbear did die. There he is. Right there, confirmed. Rip in peace. A favorite comic. Let me think. I think where Arctic Convention. No, that's not the first one. The first one where they get back here. I like this comic just from an artistic point of view. I like the way that this one turned out. Because this was also when I did like the art upgrade, so to speak. I gave everybody a little bit more details. So I like this comic. I like the way it turned out. God, I don't remember every comic, so I can't remember which one was my actual favorite. I guess also being on the topic of Cal, I think, yeah, I like this one too, of the Cal's inner monologue, the guys working in his brain, throwing out memories. That one was funny.
I'll say of the one that Telethus and I did, my favorite was actually the throwback to this, where they're like, "You're a ghost for how long? You know this?" And they're going through the filing cabinet. One of them pulls out, "Who threw out all the ghost rules?"
Yeah,
It's
I
like you
remember.
made Inside Out before Inside Out.
It's true. I mean, it's not that unique of a joke, but
I mean, that's Herman's
Yeah,
head.
but-
Come on, we all
Yeah.
remember Herman's head. Well,
How often
no,
do ghosts have these scenes, though?
Zuri's sword carrying flunkey's fate. I don't know. I don't know what would have happened to Rosa. She might have died. I don't think she deserved to die, but she was also very loyal. So I could see her taking a hit for Zuri's sake. Maybe that would even spur Zuri to change her ways, to stop being such a moron, or so reckless, I should say. Zuri's not stupid. She is conniving, but it might having someone that she's responsible for die might kind of open her eyes a bit. Not that I think Zuri deserves redemption, but I just like her. Maybe Rosa would live and they would go off adventuring into the world. Who knows? Lots of side characters that never came up again. There's actually a couple of the paladins that I had plans for. If I can remember where they are. Let's see. Dueling 101. Yeah, here we go. This guy. I don't know if I ever came up with a name for this guy, but he would eventually be promoted to lead the paladins of the Ivory Vale in Eldon's stead. And he's similar to Zuri. He's like young and kind of a dickhead. So he would form a bit of a rivalry with Eldon. Would end up getting owned. There was another captain of the Ivory Vale he's on the live stream page right on the end, below the L, near the title. He would be around too. He might have actually been promoted in Eldon's stead too, but I always treated him like a halfway decent guy. Like he's following orders, he's doing his duty as a paladin. And once things started to get more evil, he probably would jump ship because he didn't sign up for this. And that's another thing about the rules don't matter, is that the paladins are getting their powers from a clearly evil demigod.
Right.
Like, eventually there would be a disconnect there where it's like, okay, this isn't how the rulebook says it works, but it's working. This is also Zuri's or Finks' reintroduction in his stupid little ivory veil uniform. He has the same insignia as Zuri, so he's in the special forces. The little squiggly line. I remember I came up with like a ranking system for everybody because I'm I'm like that. So the all of the leaders of the 4 branches have a different insignia, but they all have 6 yellow dots, which means they are the commanders. And then everybody else has an assortment of blue and red and yellow dots, depending on what their command status is, what their rank is. I always kind of figured that as, you know, Star Trek nerds, that you and some of our other friends would enjoy that level of detail.
Yeah. You gotta have the uniform.
Heck yeah.
Especially when it's like fractal E.
Mm-hmm. Zuri, I drew Zuri and then realized that her uniform insignia is not symmetrical. So I realized that, I can't just flip her when I need her to turn the other way. I actually have to draw the insignia going that way when she turns the other way. So in all of these cases, I have 2 versions of Zuri, of her facing left and facing right, and had to build all of her poses out of that.
I mean, it looks like she turned around, but the insignia didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the panels, it's right there.
Yeah, and that's the idea, because otherwise, if you just mirror it, then the insignia would flip the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that when I designed her, or maybe somebody pointed it out in a comic when I first introduced her, and I ended up realizing, I've got to go change that. And so I changed it to make it. That was kind of the main moment where I became much more aware of symmetrical designs of characters. Because she's not the only one. Aldrin is also not symmetrical once his robe takes a bunch of damage. I had to have 2 versions of him for both left and right.
That was... We had a chart that Delithus and us would double check when we were putting things together and making sure we had rips in the right places, and you called us on a couple of them.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was a terrible idea to have his robe decay over time because of that. Like, it's just, oh god, I got so much, like double the amount of work to do as far as.
At least you didn't have anybody with full body tattoos that often had their shirt off. I know some comics that do that, and every time I see something like that, I look at that going, you made a bad choice.
That's masochistic.
Let's see here. I have done some other Order of the Stick drawings since then, like within the last couple years. Not much, but I thought I could at least show those off while I'm here for anybody who's interested. Let's see, I'm just going to close off this window capture. And I guess the Discord stream, you guys won't be able to see it, but image. If you take a look on the stream, it should pop up once I can find it here. Yeah, I need to organize the files on this computer so badly. Okay, so first up, I drew this back in 2018. This is this is my D&D character, Lily Snakeroot. Kind of a big, she's shown up in a lot of different stuff. I like her a lot. She's a dryad ranger. So yeah, I drew that back in 2018, experimenting with more detail. I didn't use black lines for any of the outlines. I did all kind of like lines that referenced the color, the fill color, I should say. So I like the way that turned out. And again, when I went back and made this, I was like, I wonder if I could do something with this, like a comic. But God no. This level of detail is hard to maintain.
Yeah. Talk about asymmetrical. She's really cool.
That was Lily, and then I also drew a friend of hers named Aspen, also dryad. She has a vine whip. I don't remember why I drew these. I think I didn't have art of these characters at the time, so I wanted to make some. What else do I have here? Oh yeah, I've got that one. That's a good one. I drew a friend's characters. This is a friend of mine, her OCs, her characters that I drew for her birthday, like I think back in 2018 as well. Grace, Omai, and Claire. So
I love the shoes of the one on the left. Especially.
Yeah, I love. Thank you, Pio. Yeah, I went like hardcore into details, and I like the way that it all turned out. What would you charge to do the Tales of Harbor Crew? I should do them, actually. That's a good point. I probably wouldn't charge anything, because these drawings aren't that difficult to do. And it'll be fan art. I'll say that. But I should do them. It has been a while since I've done any kind of art, any Ordovistic art. I did a little bit of like promo art for this stream, but not much. I cut a few corners. I was also thinking of having like little talking avatars to react to us so that you could tell who was talking, but I ran out of time.
Well, in the 20-year anniversary, we'll do that.
God. That's 7 years away. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll revisit this world. New VTuber rig, it's just Zuri. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. Oof.
Oh, wow. Both called out. Dude, that's inappropriate, Ketro. The audience doesn't know what you're talking about. Could you boot this crazy person?
There's a subscriber.
Ah, you're right.
I owe them my life.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably good for this evening in the stream. Any final words for people? I'll probably do my final dress. But any final words from you two?
Yeah, thanks for keeping the comments alive. And I mean, yeah, like the audience is the reason we're here, right? Like it's, I mean, and yeah, the great comic that they were fans of, and are fans of. But yeah, I guess I know it's cliche, but I've enjoyed seeing how much life there is in the community since like the comic itself sort of ended, and I hope that doesn't go away.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a cat in my lap. I had to tell her to go away. Yeah. Any final closing remarks, Alex?
I miss these guys. They were fun to work with. It was a blast, and I just want to thank you again for giving me and Delithus the opportunity. It was an amazing one.
It was my pleasure. It's weird. Like it's something that this comic never really went away in my head. Like it's kind of lived in the back part of my brain since I created it, and it was a lot more successful than I ever imagined it would be. There's a part of me that regrets, letting it fade into obscurity, because it's probably the most fame that I've ever gotten. But it was fun. It was, like I said, It was a huge part of my life. Yet, exactly. It was a huge part of my life. It was everything that I was doing for years, and coming back to it in retrospect, reminiscing was cool. So I want to thank you, Chris. I want to thank you, Alex. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Seriously.
And I want to especially thank everyone out there, everyone who's ever read the comic, everybody who is reading the comic, everybody who came to, or anybody that read the comic and then stopped and isn't here. Thank you too. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for just everything. This wouldn't exist without you guys. And who knows? Maybe at some point in the future I'll do something new. Like I said, I do have other creative endeavors on the horizon potentially. So fingers crossed, we'll get there. But yeah, it was fun while it lasted, and it will continue to last in some form until the internet dies, hopefully. It was my pleasure, Mr. Plasma Ball. Thank you for the well wishes. It's been fun, and I had a good time. But unfortunately, the time has come. We have reached the end. This was a bit longer of a stream than I expected, to be honest.
A lot to talk about.
It's true. There was more than I expected. Let's see. All right. So yeah, that is it for this evening. That is it for Antiheroes. There will probably be an update going up at some point in the future, hopefully within the next few days. I'll probably do up like a little splash page for the website. I'll be linking, to the VOD here on Twitch, to the VOD on YouTube. I will begin editing a pared down version of the events here, and get that up on YouTube, as well as anything else that comes out regarding the comic. I will try to remain posted. I do intend to get my friend, or at least I want to try and get my friends to draw art of my characters. So if that happens, or when that happens, I will be posting it. And yeah, if you enjoyed me, then feel free to follow me on Twitch. Feel free to tune in. I'm here several days a week doing game stuff, playing video games, but it's still me, and I have fun doing it. As well as all of my lovely friends listed here. Yeah, I'll probably have to do that, Pio. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be streaming the finale of Shovel Knight, King of Cards. Hopefully the finale. I'm hoping I can finish it in one more stream. And then Monday, myself and Wordsy are playing through 15 years of Lego video games. We're about to start number 4, which is the second Indiana Jones game. So that should be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
You're gonna do all 15 years, start to finish, on Monday, right here, kids.
Well, we've been doing it for like 2 months already. But yeah, that's Monday. Tuesday, I haven't really finalized a schedule yet. I'll be probably posting that tomorrow night on Twitter. But I'll be doing more stuff throughout the week, more games. For the time being, I'm playing through Hitman right now. That's fun. Yeah. I guess. Yeah, if you're interested, please follow along. I've got lots of content. Do you guys have anything you want to plug as far as projects or projects in the public eye, I guess?
All my projects die with me before they're even
Single tier.
exactly.
I'm trying the serial novel thing again, and I've got one that I've been putting up on Royal Road for the last month. But it's under the name Azure Linnaeus. Somebody wants to take a look, or probably
Throw
put up a link
in chat if you want.
Yeah, in chat. And it's, one of the things you talk about, you're talking earlier about not wanting to come back after all this time to the project. Like, I've got some serial novels that I got halfway through back in 2004, back 2005, and like still live in my head, but I don't know if I could ever finish writing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can pull up the link.
I'm glad to hear that, Seth. It's been knowing that there are still people there that are invested and are interested it means the world to me. It's weird to think about, but it's cool. it's just really cool. So thank you for reading.
Just popped it up into the chat,
There it is.
the Twitch chat.
Yeah.
And yes, I am still using that particular piece of drawing that Dilithus did as my user icon in a lot of
Nice.
different places.
Hey, that little goat avatar that I've been using is the same one that I drew like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I use Jordan's Ewok everywhere.
Nice.
It's great.
Yeah, it works. But yes, thank you all for watching. As Twitch etiquette, we are going to raid my friend Wordsy. He's currently playing Dark Souls in search of items. So if you like me, please check out my friends. They're funny. They're a lot of fun. Wordsy is cool. He's a voice actor. He is the one that I play Lego games with every Monday evening. But yeah, he's playing Dark Souls, so we'll raid him. If you want to use some emotes when we get there, feel free. You can buy them with channel points. You can subscribe and get access. I would greatly appreciate it. But otherwise, let them know when we get there. Let them know that we're here for the items. That could be our raid phrase. Give us the items. He's got a whole thing where he's on the search for items in Dark Souls. So when we get there, just tell him to give us the items, and he'll get very upset. But yes, thank you all for watching. I will let you know if anything changes. I love all of you. Have a good night.
Good night.